We're live. What's up, everybody? I am here with Saiyomi, Loudmouth Reviews, Lonely Wolf 1980, and the Incredible Aspie, the pwner of Owen McDonald.
Yeah.
The pwner of Owen McDonald, yes. What's so funny about... Never.
Okay.
What's so
complete
funny?
the
Yes,
line.
a woman with a penis is funny. Yes, a woman with a penis is funny.
The triggerer of Owen McDonald.
I don't know. Well, penises are usually only funny when they're too small, and that can lead to unintentional laughter, which is always sad. It's really very sad laughter if that's the case.
Oh, God.
So, Tommy Lee's not funny.
I mean, some would just say, you know, that is a very funny-looking penis you got there. I mean, that penis is it's odd. It makes me laugh due to its funniness. Its odd shape is wrong.
Right. So, yeah, I arranged this here live stream because I wanted to talk about gender and get down to the bottom of actually whether or not there is actually more than two genders. Because at first, when the whole conversation about the gender spectrum first started off, which was, I started with Owen McDonald's debate with S-Man Speaks on transphobia. Like, I was trying to keep myself an open mind on, maybe there is a third gender that I have never heard about. But the thing is, Owen McDonald just really turned me off. And that's the main thing about my one
simple fact, there is no third gender. It's ridiculous. It's impossible. Okay.
It is.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning.
Your biological males and biological females, which make up 99.7% of the population. Actually, more than that. What am I saying? Like, I think it's one. I think people who don't fall under male or female are like 1 out of every 1,300 people. So it's like, yeah, 99.0307%, I believe. So it's pretty much a massive number.
Yeah, and it's like they're called intersex, and it's like 1 out of 40 people. It's like a very tiny number. And intersex is like anybody who even has a slight, hormone imbalance. So that's so intersex, using intersex.
Well, it's not really a hormone imbalance. Intersex conditions are they're defects in the sex chromosomes that cause kind of deformities. But here's the main thing. They're associated with all kinds of other ailments, all right? Mental retardation, all right? Many forms of cancer, all right? There's like a whole list of nasty side effects they have. These are very clearly...
Hello.
All right, basically, to call these a third gender, intersex conditions, it would be like calling being born with a third arm a third gender, or being born with a tail.
Another species. They would call that another species.
It's not just chromosomes that are with
intersex
people. It's also something called androgen insensitivity.
Gynandromorphism.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like,
basically, somebody can be born with male chromosomes, but develop normally as a female because of their hormone levels, not their chromosomes.
Yeah, and to my point a little bit earlier, I'm really leaning towards that there is only two genders, but the thing is, I tried to leave an open mind still for the fairness towards Owen McDonald when I started listening to S-Man's debate with Owen McDonald, but I was listening to it live, and Owen McDonald just completely turned me off. I was all like, Owen McDonald, you don't have anything to back up your claims about there being a gender
the fact
spectrum.
that Owen McDonald is kind of a prick doesn't really negate his...
Yeah, so that made me, that kind of, I guess you could say, shut up my mind a little bit to the idea. But now, for the sake of conversation, I'm trying to be open about it, see what ideas Lonely Wolf 1980 and maybe Saiyomi might have about the issue.
Yeah, it says that there has some... he kind of strawmanned it in a way that Owen McDonald basically says there has to be I think there's he's basically, I tried to say that there's many different things that indicate the sex binary. And everything I said, he just put it off as, being like non relevant. Like, I said, what about genitals? And so it's genitals that gender, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And then I go, what about chromosomes? Okay, what about the difference of behavior? What about difference in brain activity, difference in behavior? You know, and nothing would work. Worked. Ugh. Anyway, that's what I got to say.
But every single child ever born, all of them, 100%, were the result of the combining of DNA of one biological male and one biological female. Not a single exception has ever happened in the history of the human species. That
except for Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's no evidence for that, you know.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah, like when it comes to intersex people, I will always treat them like humans. Like I think it's redundant to point that out, but whatever. In general, I think there's too small of a minority to consider really another sex or gender. They didn't evolve alongside men and women. And to anyone who wants to call me intersex phobic, they can fuck off kindly.
Like saying you're phobic against, you hate Down syndrome people if you say that they're less intelligent on average than people without Down syndrome. Kind of a fact, you know. Intersex people have deformities. Okay, that's the way it is. It doesn't make them less human. They are just as human as anyone else, but they have deformities.
Yeah.
All right. Lonely Wolf, you have been quiet this whole stream. What do you have to say about the issue on all? I watched your video about Am I Non-Binary? That was the title of your video. I watched it. It was pretty interesting. What do you have to say about the whole issue?
Yeah, it was I guess the first thing is distinguishing between biological sex and gender. So basically, because when we talk about intersex, it seems like a very redundant debate saying, you know, how many different sexes are there, because we're observing a biological reality, and we can ascribe whatever language features we want to people who are intersex or for male and female or whatever, but we're talking about a biologically observed phenomenon, and it's to do with, I guess it's all the genitalia and the chromosomes and all of the secondary sex characteristics. So these things are observable and measurable, and so the only thing that's constructed about that is whatever language we're attributing to it. So it seems like a redundant kind of argument to it seems like splitting hairs, arguing about whether they're considered like another gender. It's kind of like not something I'm interested in. But then gender itself might be a bit more complicated to pin down because I see it as the intersection of nature and culture. So, the hormones are going to affect, because by gender I'm talking about, masculinity and femininity and being a man or a woman, which is a little bit different from like the male. I mean, there's obviously a strong link. I mean, the hormones are going to guide men in a certain direction and women in a certain direction, and there's a propensity towards certain things based on those hormones. But then there's also some sort of cultural aspect as well that shifts throughout history, and then there's a perception of self that comes with gender. So that's I guess that's an interesting discussion. It's like, do we differentiate sex and gender?
Not really. Gender's pretty much just what we call human sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism is just a feature in evolution that causes males and females to have largely different characteristics, kind of depending on their station or society. Like if you look at the birds of paradise, for example, the females are all brown colored in order to camouflage, whereas the males are all very extravagant and colorful because generations of picky females pick the most extravagant and colorful males to pass on their genes. And any sons those extravagant birds father inherit their father's colors, whereas but this is entirely in the Y chromosomes, entirely feature only of the male sex of the species. This is basically, and gender is just what we call the human version of this sexual dimorphism we see throughout nature. Humans, like most other creatures, are sexually dimorphic. Males and females display different characteristics.
Hey, can I ask you guys something? What do you guys think of the phrase, a woman can do anything a man can?
That depends. That depends on what it is. Like,
I mean, bench 280 pounds. How many women can in the world?
When it comes to what women can do physically, women are physically weaker than men. And if anyone wants to call me a misogynist, they can go and blow me. On the whole thing about on the whole thing about, oh, who's the better parent? I mean,
but back to the point of
Well,
strength.
when you
Did
say
you know
who's
the average man is
When you say who's the better
stronger
parent?
than 99.9% of women in the world?
I think that Aspie is trying to say something. Let's give him a chance to speak because he doesn't have very long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I crap. I forgot what I was gonna say. I'll probably remember it in a few minutes. My apologies.
all right. So how's everyone doing tonight?
Doing good.
Back on the. I'm doing that pretty good. I just got off of work, just got out of the shower, and got this started.
You're nervous as fuck.
What?
You sound nervous as fuck, dude.
No, I'm just trying to get to what I want to say before I forget about it.
You should take notes. Yeah.
There's this one article from Aeon that I read, like rewinding back to what you said about gender, about there being about the similarities between gender and sex and how gender is like a synonym. There was this one article that I read during lunch earlier today. That was from aeon.com. It was titled "Gender is Not on a Spectrum," and it was talking about how basically gender is just basically a synonym of sex. And the only reason why people use gender instead of sex is because sex is kind of it's kind of an inappropriate word in some settings, because sex can be like can be associated with like making out and so on and so forth. And
that's people being immature, Zach.
Yeah, that's why that they're saying why gender has been invented, because in the English language, because it's a more appropriate way, more polite way of saying sex, basically. And now, fast forward to the 2010s, it seems that social justice warriors have hijacked the word gender to mean basically anything.
Pretty much.
Anything that goes for their agenda.
Yeah.
Yep. And in that debate I had with Owen, which I think everyone can agree with me that has seen it, that it was a pure shit show. Pretty much throughout the debate, it was good because I did get to vent a little bit, because I was pissed off because, you know, when you get your character slandered for a couple weeks, you tend to get a little pissed off. So it was a good way to vent.
I had my Twitter fight with Owen, and I'm not giving a shit about it.
No, at the time.
At least Owen doesn't have a big Twitter following, huge following to send thousands of people after you. So come on.
He does have a bigger Twitter following than me, and he does have a bigger subscriber base than me. But at the same time, I have a more loyal subscriber base, I would say, because my like to dislike ratios are better than his like to dislike ratios. I wonder if some of his subscribers are a bunch of hate subscribers.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? At the time, like, I was just getting fed up with that's all he had to offer was, "Oh, man, you transphobic piece of shit," or some bullshit like that. I was just tired of hearing the same shit over and over again. And he's like, "Oh, I want to have." He's like, "Anyone open to a debate?" And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'm gonna put this fucker in his place. I said, "All right, you, me, my supposed transphobia." I'm a little sick, by the way. And we debated that for 2.5 hours. It was a pure shit show. The chat was pretty cancerous. Zach pointed out that we're just going around in circles, and I thought to myself, "Zach, you genius." And ever since then, the cognitive dissonance that he displays is unbelievable. All right, do you guys remember when he initially made the whole question of gender video? If any of you have seen his channel, that was him making the initial claim that gender was on a spectrum, not a binary. And when people called him out on it and said, "Dude, that's bullshit, citation needed," pulling a tilde essentially. And he's like, "No, the burden of proof's on you." And it just was some pure cancer, where the burden of proof was clearly on him. It's just him shifting the burden of proof to other people, so shifting the goalpost, and holy Christ.
Yeah, he likes to keep on saying that he likes to keep on implying and saying that the scientific consensus nowadays is that it is on a spectrum. There are many scientific sources that say that gender is now on the spectrum, and we must move on from the binary.
Much more than either or. Do you guys remember that?
What?
Do you guys remember that Bill Nye episode? Oh, that was so cringeworthy.
Oh god, I have.
Remember it. Oh my god!
I haven't watched it at all, and I don't care to either.
When I saw that lady dancing, I felt like spraying some of this shit in my eyes.
You know, people,
Yeah,
speaking of the whole gender debate, the Daily Caller mentioned Blair White and referred to Blair White as he, and some people are flipping their shit over that fact. Does anyone else give a shit?
I don't. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that biological sex is not a social construct. As much as Riley was saying, you never had your chromosomes tested. It's still quite a rare thing for anyone to be intersex, or a man with a uterus, or as Owen asked the question, what's so funny about a woman with a penis? Like, I remember seeing Loudmouth comment that, which I didn't know Owen had said that. So I watched up to the point, and I just about died when I heard that question. Loudmouth, that was a brilliant comment. You left.
I forgot, what comment did I leave? What was it?
On Aspie's debate, you put, what's so funny about a woman with a penis? My size.
And you also tweeted it as well. I recall. Like I tagged that one video, the one that I titled "Owen McDonald has zero credibility." I tagged that to him on Twitter, and he was like, "Ha ha ha! All you did was just show how you know nothing about gender and how transphobe are." Blah 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 blah.
Please screen cap that and send it to me. I got to see that for myself, because that is just. The thing is, it's.
Oh, you saw it yourself, S-Man, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I don't recall it.
Okay. Maybe I should document the entire exchange. But really, Owen and his fanboys had nothing to offer except a whole bunch of accusations. Well, yeah, accusations of bigotry, ad hominems. Like one of them said, "Oh look, another." Or CISSIE, started it with a C to imply how I'm cisgendered, sissy, and it's a play on.
Oh my god, it was so
somebody
cancerous.
being a big sissy. But anyway, yeah, another sissy that is trying to dictate how people should define their own gender. And the thing is, that wasn't the point of the video. In fact, the whole Owen McDonald has zero credibility video had almost nothing to do about the gender spectrum. I mean, that wasn't the whole point of it. I mean, yes, I did talk about the gender spectrum, actually, but the main point of it was pointing out of how Owen McDonald is basically full of crap and how he is uncredulous, how he has no credibility because he will not back up his claims. He absolutely refuses to back up. And when he says, go look it up. And when I tried to look it up myself, I read at least 3 sources on the issue, and they base their claims off of nothing except culture, feelings, confusing intersex to be a third gender, like somebody is born with an extra sex part or an chromosome, or
studies,
or for confusing people who are in the middle of transitioning to be a third gender. I mean, I'm not exactly saying that this is case closed, gender spectrum done. I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm having this stream right now, is to try and get down to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
What would convince me of there being a third gender is if there was a third chromosome, like an AY or WY or whatever chromosome, or if there was
none.
Yeah, I know. As far as the human race knows, there is nothing like that, and there, of course, is no third type of genitals. Like you asked that in your debate with Owen Aspie, is there a third type of genitalia out there, like a combination of a penis and a vagina or something?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, I remember looking into this whole thing, and I actually did the research as well to see about this gender spectrum bullshit, and basically all it was like, I called them out on the declarative statements thing, which Zach included in his video, and everyone's like, well, yeah, they're declarative statements. I'm not making this up, and I'm just thinking to myself, this sounds like a crazy-ass creationist who's saying, oh, the Earth's flat, or it's 10,000 years old. I ain't making this up. And all the citations and the ones he sent me We're just declarative statements saying, guys, it's a spectrum. It's about feelings. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is pure retardation. I understand it's mean to call those people retarded, but come on.
But I just say, look at the fucking animal kingdom, okay? Look at the entire, all right, hell, not even just the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom. All around, two biological sexes. Like, how do flowers reproduce? Okay, what's the function of a flower? So that insects will pollinate male pollen with female parts of another flower. Okay, that's the point. And there's only two parts, male and female. Sometimes one plant will have male buds and female buds. Okay, but there is no third type. Okay, there's only male and female. That is like universal across the entire biological spectrum. And it's useful for complex organisms to exchange genes, of course, because a level of diversity is needed in the population. In order to fight off diseases. Okay, if everyone was the same, one disease could kill your entire species. That's why sex exists. That's why we don't just all lay eggs that are exact duplicates of ourselves. All right, because we need the diversity that comes from sexual reproduction.
Wait, there are genders in plants? Is that what you're saying?
No, both sexes. That's what he's saying.
What do you think flowers are?
Well, honestly, I'm not that well versed on flowers. I mean, flowers, they are alive. Obviously, I mean, that's one of the basic things that everyone.
They're alive, but why did flowers evolve? They evolved in the mid-Cretaceous period. Before that, plants didn't just bred with spores. What was the real point of flowering plants? All right, as opposed to spore reproduction of earlier plants.
Well, I guess I never heard of a flower with anything that resembles what people usually recognize as a genitalia of
because
moving
plants don't
creatures.
Fuck, okay, in order to reproduce,
that's
insects the thing. To them, or birds, or bats, or other animals. Okay, and they will produce an amount of nectar in them that the animal will drink. Okay. All right, and they'll attach flower spores to them that allow sexual reproduction. All right, once that insect goes into one flower and drinks the nectar, some pollen will get attached to that insect. That insect will move to a different flower and possibly will feed first in the male part of one flower, and then will feed in the female part of another flower. And in a way, that's how plants fuck.
Okay, so I guess I never was that well read up on pollination. Lonely Wolf, you obviously have something to say. What is it that you like to say?
Yeah. Even the act of prostitution is not necessarily a human. This may be a bit of a segue. It's a weird segue, but we're not the only animals who prostitute. Like in the penguin kingdom, apparently the female penguins, they want pebbles to build their nests, so they will mate with a male, like a single one, and then once they've finished, having their fun, then he gives her his stash of pebbles, so then she takes away her pebbles. So it's like prostitution. So instead of money, it's pebbles that is used. So it's an observation of
not just penguins. Chimpanzees will frequently, males will catch meat, small animals, and they'll frequently exchange meat with female chimps in exchange for sex, and the females are far more likely to reciprocate the advances of male chimps that provide them with enough food, basically. So yes, animals are capable of prostitution.
Who knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
I wonder if Naked Ape is a pimp.
It's the oldest business on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
See, that's why people, when they focus on this gender, they always seem to focus in on humans, okay? All right, the assumption is always made that humans aren't just another animal. We are just another beast. We're upright apes that have less body hair, okay? That's all we are, and that's all we ever will be, all right? And we have to think of ourselves like that, all right, and not think that our social constructs of our society can overcome our biological programming more than any other animal.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't argue against that. Sorry, what, Lonely? Wolf?
Yeah, so I guess because because it's hard to pick because everyone's got a different definition of gender. Because my definition was a little bit different from what sort of everyone else has said. Because I've just sort of seen it as the as just like a bit of like the nature versus nurture. But that might refer to because that's the two elements like sex and gender or whatever. But then obviously there's a third dimension, whatever we can call it, gender expression. We can call it our personality. So I guess it's a part of our personalities that have masculine qualities and feminine qualities. And I just and really the way that I see it, it's just a manifestation of personality. And like later on I'm probably going to get into some weird shit, but I'm trying to look at it from an alternative point of view when I start looking at like alchemy.
Wait, no.
Or
No. Yeah, I did.
Okay, so I charge you 21.45.
Yeah.
21.45, 536.
Oh yeah, I get it now. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll have
You forgot to silence yourself, Aspie.
Hey Aspie, can you tell him I'll have a McDouble? I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm terrible.
Okay, so yeah, with what you were saying right there, Wolf. As I watched your video, you were talking mainly about gender expression and the ranging personalities of between masculinity and femininity. And the thing is, when you were talking about gender expression, it sounded like you were just that whole topic was mainly talking about personality, but not but not really talking about physically observable sex.
No, because that's pretty much easy. It's easy to pin down observable sex because it's just what you see, and science has already taken care of it. So it's when we contemplate ourselves, I guess our sense of self-identification, which, and that's my biggest concern, is it's the proliferation of this vocabulary that's just developed like overnight. And like over the last 4 years, the amount of vocabulary has become really quite burdensome. And essentially what we're talking about is part of our, I guess, the part of our personality. And our sense of identification should be very broad, but to narrow it down to a particular identity and to sort of look so closely at the, the gradations of everything else, it's a very limited form of identification.
Right, and Owen MacDonald, he doesn't want to base gender off of physically observable sex. He wants to base that all off of feelings and personality. I mean, if you watch his debate with Incredible Aspie, he completely backs himself into that corner. As Aspie says, one of the factors that determines gender is not your own subjectivity. And then Owen says, but it is. And then he goes on talking about feelings and what people just merely claim and whatnot. And that was another point about my Owen MacDonald has zero credibility video, is the fact that he was basing science and biology, the science and biology surrounding gender, off of feelings. And I'm supposed to completely buy his agenda about the gender spectrum based off of people's subjectivity.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, like I'm coming from a place where, like, because I've got an interesting experience. I mean, when people who self-identify as non-binary, it's like, yes, I understand exactly what they're going through, because I was kind of, I mean, to be very honest, I would have been probably better off if I had been born in the body of a woman. Like, I probably would have felt a bit better, but that's just something I had to deal with. Like, it wasn't going to happen. And it might be a feeling. It's a sensation of being displaced and not belonging to, or being alienated from the rest of society. But that's a subjective feeling that can't really, like, I don't see how I can put that into observable scientific reality, or, to materialize that into an observable reality, because, I could argue that, oh yes, I'm, this, I can name myself this, but, the weight of evidence is against me rather than for me. So I am from a subjective thing. So the conclusion is that, this is just really a personality trait. So if I describe misogyny or, being a eunuch or whatever, I mean, I'm essentially describing a personality rather than something that's observable or scientific.
Yeah, and but the thing is, You say that you would have been more comfortable if you were born in a female body instead. And I say, if you were to transition, you would lose that definable scruff and bushy eyebrows that makes you who you are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Because it's not strong enough. I mean, there's not a
totally homo, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
Zach is gay as fuck. Make that a video.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people make associate that with kind of non-binary gender, because it's like that. Because away from that sort of thing, but it's not strong enough where I'd feel the need to try. I mean, I'd be horrible. I mean, my feet are like like clown boots. I've got massive feet, like they're like fucking clown boots when I put them on, and I'm like nearly 7 feet tall, and so yeah, it wouldn't happen. But having said that, it's a cyclical shift that happens, and then it's like a mental sex change. Really, that's what it's like. I mean, but then it comes back to thinking, all right, I'd be a very butch woman, so I'm too manly to become like to even think about any sort of transition. So I just stay where I am, like as stranded as I am a little bit. It's just the way it is, and then I just put it down. I mean, the other perspectives I look at is like I don't look at it from the scientific perspective. I mean, it's much more subjective. Like I tend to look at things like alchemy, consciousness, and even astrological things. So I think that some of these young people, like, they should go to Mjollnir Man and show them their date of birth and get their like astrological profile.
Shame we don't have him here right now.
Yeah, because that's a big part of the way that I relate to. I look at archetypes and symbols, and that's the limitation of the way some of these young activists are going about it. It's sort of a very limited imagination in what they're doing, and they're not really reading about other things. They're sort of sticking to this kind of gender theory, feminist type.
Yeah, or their imagination is just an overdrive.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not trying to be all insulting to them, but I get the impression that their imagination is just all over the goddamn place. Kind of like how kids, their imaginations are all over the place, but over time with kids, they eventually rein that in a little bit.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I feel, I mean, even though, yes, like these people who are identifying as sort of this third gender, whatever, yes, I can relate to what their experiences are, because when they talk about that, I say, yes, I absolutely understand what you're going through, and it is a very like subjective personal experience. But I just fundamentally disagree with the way that they're describing it, the language they're using, and if anything, they're really alienating themselves from the rest of the world. Like the word like non-binary, the word like cis. I mean, those words are just like walls that are being put up, and it's really and so what I'm trying to do is bring back, I guess, a certain sense of relatability to the rest of the world, so people can sort of maybe understand the experience. But at the same time, I'm not going to try and advocate for the use of pronouns and third genders or whatever, or 76 genders. Like, I'd rather go down a different path of thinking.
Yeah, I remember Naked Ape on one of his videos said that basically those third genders, like non-binary and stuff, they're all just Munchausen syndrome. It's kids wanting to be special. They're wanting to be unique.
Exactly.
So they're just wanting attention, basically, is all they want. I mean, these aren't people who have gender dysphoria. They're not mentally ill like a lot of transgender people are. No. They're just wanting attention, and they have a power. And the professors and stuff have given them this by saying, "Oh yes, your gender is valid because you think it is, and we don't want to hurt your identity because." But here's the thing. You got to look at it. You eventually got to put your foot down and just say, as non-binary, we're not going to tolerate your insanity. Okay, we know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to get attention. You're just trying to be you're basically just being a burden on society when you do that. So I probably went a little too intense there, but you probably know what I'm trying to say here.
Right. Kids want to be viewed as special. And on top of that, I would also say that kids are also, when they're going through puberty, are very sexually confused. Like they'll be asking, what is going on? Like, for example, if a kid was to have if a little boy was to have a wet dream, they'd probably think that they were peeing themselves in bed, and they were thinking, oh man, I'm supposed to be potty trained right now at this age. What am I doing? When really it's just part of the whole sexual process that they're going through, and really it's just,
watch
they're
Big Mouth.
confused. What?
Watch Big Mouth.
Watch Big Mouth?
It's just show on Netflix. You don't want to know. Look it up on YouTube. Look at the trailer.
No thanks. No thanks. If it's anything like the Japanese horror films that you and Loudmouth talked about in one of the last streams, no thanks.
That wasn't Japanese. It was made by some crackhead in America.
Green applause.
Okay, for some reason I thought you guys were saying that it was an anime in Asia or something.
No, it was made in America by some insane crackhead who was high on drugs while he made it, okay? And like I said, I have not watched the entire movie. I believe people when they say it's the worst thing they've ever seen. I've seen just highly censored parts of it. Oh, fuck, it's horrible.
Yeah, man, wow, how bad could it possibly be? I don't want to know.
If it was live action, it would be illegal.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah, keep going.
By the way, I want to let Saiyomi have a word in edgewise here. You've been very quiet the entire stream, Saiyomi.
Oh, I was just trying to, see everyone's positions on everything.
Hey, Mario.
My position is just wherever I think the science is. Feelings don't matter. The science matters.
Yeah, and there's this one super long article that I read from National Geographic. Like, in my research of trying to find some articles that support Owen's position, just to try and see how valid his claims really are. And reading through National Geographic, if you were to read the one National Geographic article that I read, I can't remember the title of it exactly. It was How Science is Helping Us Understand Gender. And if you were to read this article, you wouldn't take National Geographic as credible anymore, because they're basing that gender is on a spectrum off of anecdotes of people's feelings and off of culture. Like, for example, in Samoa, apparently there is a third gender called Fa'afafine, where basically anatomically they are male. Like, genetically they are male, but they just take female positions. They take female. They have feminine personalities. So basically, they're just gay men, basically.
Is that just that tribe in, like, I forgot, like, not Africa, is it in South America or some Asian country? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, there was multiple examples that National Geographic was pulling up of different cultures having third genders. And, that's the whole thing about Owen McDonald bringing up different cultures when it came to both you and S-Man's debate on gender.
Oh, my God.
Well, all that is just gender expression.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? No, both of our debates, Aspie, I'm not going to lie, listening to them back, which I have since they went down, I came this close to putting my fist to the monitor. But anyway, yeah, it's like he was bringing up all these cultures. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about culture. Fuck everybody's culture. If I could just flip the bird to everyone's culture to show I don't give a damn about any of them, I do it. I mean,
and then I brought up that Papua New Guinea thing where all the where pedophilia was basically
Oh shit! No, you brought up an analogy which I think Lonely Wolf said that was a fallacious argument you made. I think he did. Basically,
it wasn't. No, it was just. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I don't believe that it was trans, because I don't believe that you were comparing trans people to pedophiles. I mean, that was like, I think that was going a bit too far. Like at worst, you could probably say maybe it was a little bit of a slippery slope. Like,
yeah,
what was
no rational person would come to the conclusion that Aspie was comparing pedophiles and transgender people.
No, it's just a slippery. I think it was maybe a little bit on the slippery slope side, but that's probably as worse as you could probably say.
Google it is in the chat, y'all.
I just saw it and it's so cancerous.
Hey, Saiyomi, I think you have a fan. Apparently, Google it has evidence that Owen McDonald faps to pictures of you. And he's accusing me of fapping to you as well, and also says that I'm hitting on Lonely Wolf 1980. Hey, it was just one gay comment. All right, Google it. It was just one gay comment. I'm digging my own grave right now.
Yeah, looking at her picture doing this.
I want to hear about the granny porn.
Oh, God.
Hey, you know,
Zach.
speaking of pornography, I didn't know this existed till just a while ago. Tentacle porn, Japanese tentacle porn. I didn't know.
What the?
Oh, eel porn's a
Yeah,
thing.
that exists. A lot of shit exists in Japan. It's fucked up.
Yeah, Japan's they're a sad, lonely people. They need Jesus.
Hey, if a woman sticks a whole bunch of eels in her twat, will she be like a new gender then?
What? What should be a new gender then?
A Japanese woman with a bunch of eels in her twat. It's technically a new genitalia.
It is a modification.
Zach, we're both going to hell.
I think I got this stream. This stream has given me AIDS.
Oh,
Zach,
God.
Zach, you can make a video where the stream gets really cancerous because of the chat or what you made that comment about. It's a lonely wolf.
Yeah, it's going to be like a cunt cancer stream.
Oh, we already have a name for this stream. It's called the Cancer Podcast.
Yeah. Speaking of the cancer, Google it. How are you doing today? Oh, Jesus Christ! I needed that laugh. Ever since
So
Zach
what is
told the
Google?
whole
What's
Friday-
Google?
This troll in the chat a couple months back when we started doing these streams. This random troll named Google it would infiltrate the chat of the live chat and just post some of the weirdest bullshit ever. He's triggered Zach on a few occasions, JJ on a few occasions. He's roasted Aspie on a few occasions. He made Zach almost cry on a few occasions. It's just hilarious.
Well, I want to hear what Google has to say about the granny porn.
Hey,
Well,
here's something interesting. You know what the number in America? You know what the number one looked up thing on Pornhub is actually?
What?
Stepsister.
Oh, God.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I think the lesbian's right below that, maybe, or it's the first. I don't know. I forget.
War corpse.
Yeah, War Corpse is contributing high to that search.
War Corpse likes lesbian porn.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Zach, don't take a shit on. Turn off your camera and mic, dude. Come on.
Oh.
Hey,
what?
Mom. Hey,
It's
guys.
done
I gotta
robotic?
go for a few minutes. I'll be right back.
All right, cool.
Okay.
What, my audio is going robotic now?
No, you sounded like you were
No, you're
taking
good.
shit for a second. I'm like, Zach, please, for the mercy of our ears and stomachs, do not do that again. Holy shit.
Okay. Yeah, making that video, Owen McDonald has zero credibility. It was not easy to make. I mean, particularly when having to trudge through that National Geographic article.
I'm actually in the Zach, you know the rants I do. It's a parody of Kevin Logan's Descent of Manosphere.
Right.
You know, if you've ever
He
seen
told
his
us about
videos, if you ever see his videos, he'll take clips of people saying stupid things, and it's kind of funny. And oh my God, we could go through days of just out of context statements that sound funny. Where he says, if without context, one of the clips would have him saying, "Dyke, bitch, dickhead, retard." Oh my God. You want to know the context? Is he was parodying one of my videos where I was really pissed off and I was profanity up the wall, and he's all like, "His language is so juvenile." Oh my. And I don't know. It's just I think I'll use some parts of Zach's video. But where'd you get that music, by the way? That was some fucking awesome music, dude.
Oh, it was just some non-copyright music that was part of the music selection that Wondershare Filmora provides you for free. I mean, it's
bastard.
yeah, it's in the music library of Wondershare for more. That's it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I finally got that video out. All right. Yeah. As far as gender goes and the whole transgender issue, like I used to been a bit of an asshole. Oh god, Google it says Zach faps to granny porn. Betty White.
Betty White.
Betty White. Zach faps to granny porn. Betty White. That's what Google it says.
Yep. It always begins in
You're
the
lucky
kitchen.
she'll give you a gummy.
What the fuck?
Yeah, you get that erotic. They start the erotic music the minute the apple pie comes out of the oven. It's like when Granny makes an apple pie just right. That's always the beginning of a granny porn, and then it's like or she bakes you she bakes you extra cookies or something like that, and then that's the start of the erotic.
Or she bakes you a cherry pie, and then all of a sudden you hear Warrant play. She's my cherry pie, cool drink of water, such a sweet surprise.
Jack, you're gonna kill me.
What?
Oh my god, you're gonna make my sides leave the building. Holy shit. Google it.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about like some of the just the perspectives I use about, because I've sort of made my case that it's kind of like it's really a personality trait that kind of puts me where I am, so even though I'm experiencing what people are, and I can sympathize with the I guess the feeling of being displaced, that's probably the best word for it, and some people might call it a mental sex change or whatever, but the I guess I kind of look beyond like science or feminist theory or whatever, and it's like I tend to use astrological things, so that's why I'm not really on board with the language that's used, because it's so it seems very clunky, like the idea of non-binaries and cis and the kind of list of all the pronouns. It's like I tend to look at more I guess I'm inspired a little bit by Jung, the way that if I read the text of that about the consciousness or whatever, so there's kind of a spiritual aspect to our, because I don't know whether people are atheists or not here, but I sort of believe there's a unconscious or spiritual aspect to ourselves, and so I get a lot of it.
Yeah.
I got one question for you, Lonely Wolf.
Yep.
What the fuck are you doing assaulting Owen McDonald with fried chicken and watermelon?
What?
Google it just said in the chat. LW hits Owen in the head with fried chicken and watermelon.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah, I didn't really look. That's really harsh, that chicken and watermelon thing. I didn't agree with that.
Oh my god.
What? You didn't like that joke, that little satirical stab that I put with Owen McDonald?
Oh,
I remember
yeah.
that
I'm gonna have to say that I don't want to be like the full. I don't want to be an asshole or nothing like that. But yeah, that's probably. Yeah, I don't know. I felt I was going a bit too far, but that's. I mean, everyone's got a different.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, at the time, like I was just simply telling Zach about a video I'd saw of Owen's that I'd responded to, and then he randomly just cut me off, and he's like, he said that, and I guess part of the reason I laughed was out of the pure fact it was as random as it was, because I did not. Zach looked like the goody two shoes Christian. That just threw me off guard, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh my god. I just started laughing, and then afterwards he downloaded the video, he cut it to where there's Thug Life music in the background, he puts on some sunglasses, and then I did my edit of it, and I mean, do I feel bad about laughing at it? Fuck no. Because it happened a few months ago, and feeling bad for something that happened that long ago is idiotic.
Yeah.
I do get why you didn't find it as funny, Lonely Wolf, but I have a dark sense. I don't know about everybody else, but I have a dark sense of humor. And to answer what Lonely Wolf
so do
said,
I.
You say that it goes a little bit too far, and I guess it sort of does, but honestly, it was a satirical and quite blunt way of basically saying, S-Man, you should not give a fuck if he calls you transphobic just for saying transgender jokes.
Yeah, I mean,
that was basically the message that I was trying to convey with S-Man. True humor, racist humor.
here's the thing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
When it
there's a
comes
number of things there. The minute the kind of interaction between Aspie and Owen, like, because I was saying to S-Man that, you know, it wasn't so much the content of the joke that about like that it was about, you know, women with penises or whatever. Like that in itself was not the what makes things like that humorous is the timing. Like it was Aspie's response, and it was just the timing of everything that happened. So that was kind of what.
Yeah.
It's not so much the transgender, the content of it. It was more of the timing, and that sort of had a bit of a comical effect.
Yeah, and I want to point out something. Like, I don't care now, like what he thinks. It's just when he would constantly tell his followers and kind of slander my name. That's when I really started to get really fucking sick of hearing. Because I'd hear, "Oh, S-Man, you sexist. Oh, you Islamophobe," all that bullshit and ableist. I mean, is it a bit ableist for me to call Danny Quartz autistic 50 times? Okay, maybe it was a little mean. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, maybe it was a little mean, but I just didn't care. But the whole transphobe thing, it just got annoying. Where I'm like, I felt like
Google it says you fap to my face. Is that true, Zach?
No. Why would I fap to your herpes-ridden face, motherfucker?
That's fighting words, dude. What's your address?
Well, you think those are fighting words? Yeah, I'm taking that from the guy who sounds like he swallowed Gilbert Gottfried.
Jesus, Zach. This chat is so cancerous. I've needed to laugh all day. I've been kind of feeling like shit. So I needed to laugh today.
Speaking of gender, what is that? The fucking gender umbrella or whatever the fuck they're calling.
All right.
The only umbrella.
I'm
gonna find something cute and
yeah,
jam it on the screen just to make this chat more friendly.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? With the whole spectrum thing, the whole spectrum umbrella. The only thing it keeps away
Here's something.
Yeah. The only thing that the gender spectrum keeps away from people is common sense. I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want. I would never support legislation that would stop someone from being able to call themselves whatever the fuck they want. Aww.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. But either way, it's just, whenever anyone in my state comes to me non-binary, that shit just gets me, like, I have to, like, really struggle not to laugh at the pure stupidity of it all.
Yeah,
but I guess
so many people, you know, they mix up gender with gender expression.
Right now the chat's friendlier.
Instead of calling myself a transgender or whatever, I just call myself transsexual, because technically that's what I am anyways. I mean, hormone. I got tits, I got hips, you know. I'm pretty physiologically female right now.
I wouldn't blame you, Saiyomi, because really that word gender has been hijacked, like I said earlier in the stream.
Yeah, I'll be right back. My phone's doing some weird stuff. Sorry.
It's limited. It's a bit limiting those because, you know, people are seeking a certain freedom or liberation or whatever, but in the process, like what I believe is when you sort of use these labels like you know, calling yourself a demisexual or whatever, it's creating another kind of box for yourself, and that's what I'm sort of advocating for is you know, embracing the whole of the identity because I think in terms of astronomical terms. So you know, fundamentally there's a big split. I mean, I've got because I think Mjollnir Man could relate to a video I made about how that relates to the whole issue. Because he sort of said that if more people were talking about gender that way, like it wouldn't be as kind of alienating to the rest of the world. It wouldn't shut us off. Because, you know, you can use simple symbology because I'm drawn more to visual images rather than words. And that's why I'm so averse to using all those kind of, this panoply of language has been, you know, trotted out by the gender theory. But, you know, one of the big things is, I guess astrologically, I look at my profile and it's a big fracture in the personality. So there's like an Aquarium, which is a very kind of, you know, emotionally detached. So it seems to be a masculine thing, but underneath that is the Scorpio, which is those two things. So it causes a bit of a fracture or a kind of a split. And that's why, like, personality wise, you know, I'm kind of quarreling with, and that's what it seems like. It's a bit of a fight between, you know, a masculine and feminine force that's going beneath the psyche. So it's not necessarily a a gender. It's just like it's something to do with the psyche. So it's a fundamental fracture that's happened that's caused the sort of disorder, I guess, that I could call it, or the sense of being stranded, I guess. And then when you talk about the kind of gender spectrum, sometimes I relate it back to when I think about alchemy. So it's the idea of putting there's two extreme elements that are polarizing, and then we're trying to synthesize those to form that. And that's really and that's one of the things in alchemy. It's like in our personality we have masculinity and femininity, and it's kind of mixing those two elements together that makes up the gendered part of our personality. But when we self-identify, like, the gender thing is only such a small part of that. And I think the current generation that's coming up, it's their job to kind of identify themselves, and that's part of growing up as a teenager. But I think that even if we accepted like all of their words, if we used every pronoun, everything like that, I think they'd still feel alienated, because I think there's a number of other reasons apart from their perceptions of gender. I think there's other ways in which they could be dissident as well, because that's the same thing with me as well. Like, I could I could use as many words as I want, but I'd still feel dissident because there's other parts of my personality that are also kind of competing with each other.
Oh yeah,
So
I
hopefully
don't agree that we all have, feminine and masculine attributes as far as like, how we act and how feminine we are physically or whatever.
Yeah, but the thing that I have with that is having that actually determine your sex as evidence. Putting that as evidence that there are more than two sexes, more than two genders. For example, like I said, Samoa says that they have a third gender called Fa'afafine, and they base that just because they are dudes that act feminine. And that does not convince me that there is a third gender. Personalities and way people act does not determine gender.
No, it's gender expression. It's a type of gender expression.
No, I think it really limits our expression if we tie ourselves down to a gender label. That's kind of just because there's a certain dissidence, or what I'm talking about there is it feels real to me. It's definitely a bizarre experience to go through, but but I'm not going to use that to define a particular identity, because I believe that puts me into a box, and I want to be I want freedom from any kind of boxes, and that's what I feel it does to these young people. And I guess and even speaking as an asexual as well, like, I'm also out of sync with a lot of them as well, because they often get tied together, those two things. Like, a lot of people who are asexual, they often report experiencing that sort of I guess being a genderless type entity, which is like a fundamental part of the psyche or the personality. It's not necessarily a gender, but a personality trait. And yeah, I'm sort of out of sync with that part of it as well. Even though I am 100% asexual, I'm still out of phase with other asexuals because they're also indulging in a lot of that word heavy language.
So asexual basically means that you're sexually attracted to nothing and nobody.
He doesn't give a fuck.
I think asexual is not good. We should call it non-sexual. I think that'd be better.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
It's you believe in nothing. That's kind of like as an analogy.
We believe in nothing, Lebowski. Nothing.
Oh, okay. That's actually when you put the letter A like directly in front of a word, it means non. Is how I'm understanding it. Like asexual, that means that you have no sexual preferences. Amoral means that it is not moral nor immoral. Like
atypical is. Yeah, here's an example. Google it posting anything normal and decent in the chat would be atypical for Google it to do, right? Speaking, and I'm looking at the chat, and my fucking god, Google it is getting even weirder. Mjollnir Man has a quest. Trans people are on a quest to achieve their desired gender, and if we treat them as the gender they feel they are they obligated to tell their potential partners that they were? once the opposite gender. And I think it's I do believe honesty is always the best policy, because sometimes with some people, being trans can be a deal breaker. For instance, I wouldn't date a trans person, but
I've never had trouble.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Zach or Loudmouth or, well, and Lonely Wolf says sexual, so never mind.
I'm back again.
I mean, I had a brief. I only had the only romantic thing I ever had was like a brief kind of romantic liaison with a lesbian who was going through a dry spell, because I was living in a small town and like there were no other lesbians around, so she wanted someone to like hold her hand across the street or whatever. So that was like fine. We held hands in publicly, but there was no like there's obviously no so because she's a lesbian, of course, so she wouldn't be
wow. Yeah.
But yeah, but then I don't know. That turned out bad because she was a con artist. Well, I think she died. I think she died or something. I was like, whatever.
Oh. Hopefully, I hope that that she had a good life. I wouldn't want anyone like to die. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but anyway, yeah, I don't know about Zach. I mean, I'm not gonna make a joke that he likes trans women or anything, or Aspie, but I personally wouldn't. But I would never shame a guy who was romantically interested in a trans man or woman. I know I have a trans friend. He's my best friend, and we had a conversation about it. And he said that he could understand. I mean, he said it was a bit weird, but I mean, to each his own. It was his attitude. Zach, out of curiosity, would you ever date a trans person?
I probably would not rule it out because, to be quite blunt, Blair White is pretty hot.
I'm looking at Mjollnir Man. He says he had a crush on a lesbian in his junior year of high school. I'm pretty sure a lot of straight men do crush on lesbians at some point in time.
For me, say they didn't. I don't care if anyone calls me a bigot for this. I would prefer any biological woman on the planet over any transgender woman.
I mean,
well,
here's the
fun
thing, right?
fucking your land whales.
Here's the
day coming, but yes, that's. But honestly, yes, I would rule out the idea entirely.
Like, I remember some people would criticize me for saying I wouldn't date a trans person, like, than just genitals. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I would explain the whole biological sex thing, the whole secondary sex characteristics, and I said I would have no problem having a trans person's back. In fact,
but I mean,
you know what my thing is? If I'm gonna date a trans somebody, it better if I'm gonna date anybody, it better either have a vagina and can orgasm.
Right, that's the main thing. A real vagina has kind of a particular feel to it. It's a very unique thing that really cannot be simulated. It's kind of something special.
Yeah, and speaking of those things, Aspie, you got to bring them to it. You have to bring them to it as well. I'm kidding. Anyway, but yeah, like I've had to defend trans people in my life. There was a trans teacher who, God, the kids there, I think Owen would be justified in calling them transphobe. Like they'd leave notes on her door and desk all the time saying she was a disgusting freak. And my best friend who's trans, and I asked him how long he felt that way, just to see if how I could help him. He said he's realized that since he was 5, and now like over a decade later.
Yeah. Not even funny what they would do like that. What those students, like those Trump supporting students, did to that black teacher, that black SAWG. Remember see that video?
Yeah.
Did you ever see that? Dude, that was the funniest. Gemini, I think, responded to it. It was hilarious.
Yeah, but I mean, I've had to come to the defense of my friend when people would pick on him and call him. They'd be like, "Oh my God, you want to go in the men's restroom? You fucking rapist," or something. Basically, junior high for him was kind of hell. And
hey, I kind of want to. I kind of want to verbally address Mjollnir Man's point here. So in the chat, I asked him out of curiosity, Mjollnir, do you believe in the gender spectrum and that there are more than 2 genders/sexes? And he says in response, I think it's male or female personally, but I don't have a problem with people identifying with other things. This is really only a debate here in the Western world. Many cultures view that there are more than one gender. I think he meant to say two genders. That might have been a typo right there. But he says many cultures view that there are more than two genders, such as in India, there is a segment of males who are more feminine but are treated as a third gender in their society. Some Native American men would take the role of a female and would marry males. No problems whatsoever. And you know, if people personally want to identify as something unique from male or female, out of their own liberty, we cannot really control them on what they want to do. But the whole issue, why this freaking issue, gender spectrum, is brought up. The reason why this issue is brought up so much is because of the legality behind it and the accusations of bigotry.
They're trying to shove it down your throat, like that C-16 bill in Canada. If you say the wrong, or here in California, if you say the wrong pronouns, you could be sent to jail or fined.
You're trapped in California, basically. And this whole bullshit of forcing people to do it, like, I understand like why people felt that way, but at the same time, you like, let's say you guys started referring to me as S-woman, or you guys kept referring to me as a woman. As annoying that might get, I wouldn't really give a fuck. I wouldn't force you guys. I wouldn't hold a gun to your guys' heads and be like, you motherfuckers better refer to me as a male, or some stupid shit like that. Like, that would be insanely retarded. And Aspie would be like, haha, what a little bitch, or something like that. And I wouldn't blame him.
I mean, yeah, I've got a very strong view of those laws. It's like so for me, it's like I guess I'm speaking as an asexual and also someone who has sort of a little bit dissident in terms of the way, you know, in which I might perceive myself, gender-wise or whatever. There's a bit of a abnormality, but I think the fundamental thing is like the freedom and dignity is not going to be achieved by this paternalistic kind of protection. Like, especially because my asexuality is what I call street smart asexuality. Like, when someone's, giving me shit, like, I'll come up with I'll deal with it on the spot and just put them in their place on my own. Like, I don't want some like authority figure coming down and, or any type of protection. Like, and that's the quest of young people, is to define their own generation. And, every generation has had to define itself in its own way. And that kind of dignity and freedom is not going to be achieved by any type of legal protection. And it's just going to make the situation so much worse. Like, people can be rude about asexuality. They'll ask questions that are very intrusive. They'll say, do you masturbate? And I just like, you have to come up with a quick response and you have to be witty and on your feet. And I'll just say, like if someone asks me, do you masturbate? And I'll just say, well, can you tweet me a picture of your mum and I might think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit too much of a personal question right there.
Yeah, it's like, well, first off, if it's a stupid question, it's a stupid question. If you have keep going, sorry.
Speaking of sex, apparently I'm being put on the spot here in the chat. Google it asks, Zach, would you let Blair blow you?
Well, Zach, would you? I mean, no one's going to judge you. I mean, anyway, Mjollnir Man, I guess this is his first appearance on Zach.
On the Zach Edwards program for the first time. What is up, boys?
What's going on?
Yeah, you are on Strike Force right now. What I like to call my little
It's simple
program.
as that. If you would let Blair blow you, you're not straight. That's fine if you're not straight, but you can't be a straight male if you would let Blair blow you.
I would say Zach would
All I
probably
can
be a
say,
bisexual.
there's a lot of gay men out there.
Can I tell a story?
I get a lot of attention.
Can I?
I mean, sorry, what?
Go ahead, Mjollnir.
I'd like to tell.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the floor, Mjollnir.
Okay, I just want to tell a quick story. It's really funny. Anyways, so I had this manager named Chad. So you already know the name's bad.
Yeah.
Fuck. Hold on.
Rhymes.
I had the stream on in the background. It's throwing me off, slowing me down. Anyways, I had this manager named Chad, so you already know it's bad news because the dude's named Chad. Anyways, he told us the story. He got like really drunk and then took a lot of cocaine and blew a transgender hooker. But to this day, he still claims he's not gay for doing that. I don't know. Does that make you gay? I'm not sure. Because like,
I mean, if you are attracted,
well, like, oh, sorry.
If you are attracted to somebody of the same sex as you, it's gay.
Yeah.
If you're
Okay.
not, then I would say.
But like, what?
Like if yeah.
What if the person was post-op? Does that change it? Like, I think it kind of goes back to what I was
It does
talking
not
about
change
earlier.
you one bit.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, but what if like you weren't aware? Because like,
Yes,
it kinda
straps
goes
are
back to
gay.
Okay, I get that. But does it make it gay if you're unknowingly engaging with someone who used to be a man and you didn't know that?
well,
That's why I kind of wanted to ask.
Mjollnir Man.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask because, like,
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how to pronounce your name,
here's how I
Saiyomi,
answer.
Saiyomi. But like, do you feel obligated as a trans person to tell like potential partners and whatnot?
Oh yeah, I tell them all. I tell them before I meet them. I have no problems
Okay.
whatsoever.
To answer your question, Mjollnir Man, in my opinion, it's not the gayest thing in the world, but it's not the straightest either. I mean, I do get where Loudmouth was coming from, as I view maybe a tad bisexual, but a guy, because like I take the lonely wolf position here. That would be a douchebag move to make fun of a guy who has feelings for a trans person. And I was gonna make a joke at your expense that we're like, Mjollnir Man, you don't have to come up with a fake story, dude. I mean, we get it. You know? I was gonna make that joke.
I think
but
there's something there's something that's inherently
I
heterosexual.
lost the timing.
I mean, I don't really
No,
care.
it's not fake. It's really not fake. Okay, so that same manager, I remember the reason he got fired. But anyways, he also got caught with like a pound of grass in his car with like 4 blunts rolled up in his glove box.
A pound of
Yeah, and
marijuana.
he took mommy's money and bought like the best lawyer in the area, so he never really has to fucking
How
worry
dense
about
was
jail
it?
time.
Was it like just a massive bag, or was it like really dense? Like
we're talking like a brick.
a brick.
weed.
Why am I talking
denser
about this
than
right now? I'm trying to incriminate myself over here. Anyway,
It's
I don't
denser
smoke
than your
pot.
debate opponent, Aspie.
Ha!
It's denser than...
I'd
Wait,
kind
there's
of
nobody as dense as that.
heterosexual, that there is a heterosexual element of like attraction to a trans woman, because like if you're if you're attracted to her boobs and you got your face like buried in her boobs and you're sucking on her titties and everything, then that in itself is something that is inherently a heterosexual part of you.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing, right?
And the thing that I would have to, I kind of wanted to respond to the question: is it gay to be attracted to a post-op trans person that is the opposite, well, transition sex of you? And the thing is, if you want to get technical, well, then I guess that means that I myself might be a little bit bi just for saying that Blair White is hot. But on the other hand, why do I think that Blair White is hot? Is it because she has these massive burly arms, this big bulging muscular chest, this jaw, or is it because Blair White has a nice pair of tits and a full pair of lips?
Because like, I'm gonna have to agree with Lonely Wolf on this. It's like,
Yeah, you look at her arms. You can
if
still tell
it's
that she's not
the
a woman.
latter, then that means that.
I mean, like here's something Blair White made a video about, and it actually made a lot of sense, right? Trans porn, she says, only really sells on a straight website.
Hey, speaking of which, keep going. Sorry.
Dead on.
Your mic is kind of breaking up.
Yeah, like it kind of sounds like a robot, buddy.
So,
Hey, can I offer you guys a scenario? Here's my
You're
scenario.
roboting, yes, man.
I don't think.
Still robot.
S-Man, you're still breaking out.
R.I.P. S-Man's internet connection.
Hey, can I say something? Hey, here's a question.
Yeah.
If you think, if a guy who is straight is attracted is attracted to a guy, to a trans female who is actually wants a guy, that's gay. If you think a gay, what about a gay guy who's attracted to a trans man that used to be a woman? How would that work?
Yeah, how would that work?
I could understand that. That because I've heard a lot of women who are they're heterosexual women, but they've seen some trans men, and when they like work out their muscles and they've got the testosterone, they've got a bit of a beard growing on, and they think, "Fuck, that guy's hot." Like and that's inherently there is a heterosexual. It does seem like a heterosexual attraction in that way.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, when it comes to is my audio all right?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
And when I was about to leave, I was going to make a joke at Zach's expense, but anyway, what's up?
S-Man?
Yeah?
S-Man, we can't hear you.
I can hear.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I can hear you, S-Man.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Zach, it's just the weed you secretly consume, man.
Did you like mute him? I don't know.
No.
I didn't mute him. I mean, take a look at the Google Hangouts here.
No,
I mean,
it's
he
just
doesn't
Zach.
have the crossed out mic in front of his icon. For some reason, I really cannot hear you, S-Man. I can hear everyone else in the chat, but I cannot hear you.
Fucking Christ. Whoever designed Google Hangouts needs to be cashed.
Yep, I can hear it.
Google it asks if Zach would blow Blair White. Would you blow Blair White?
Blair White,
Zach, I mean, we're not going to judge you.
Blair White, yeah. Blair White has not gotten rid of the dick.
I've never even seen a video by hers. Like, everybody talks about her, but I've just never even fucking looked at any of her videos, so.
You know, but,
Wait a minute,
I mean, as I was saying earlier, what?
Blair really hasn't. What you say, Loudmouth? Blair hasn't gotten rid of the D of her dick.
Blair White has not gotten rid of the dick.
Well,
Blair
like, I mean, you kind of got to see it from their perspective, though. Because,
what the fuck?
You know, I don't know how it really works post-op, but a lot of them say, like, yeah, I'd still kind of like to have, like, an actual orgasm still in my life. So, like, I guess, like, post-op.
Don't they redo the nerves? Don't they redo the nerve endings? I think Saiyomi may have said that.
Yeah, it depends on the surgeon. A good one will do all the nerve endings and shit for you. And if you take progesterone, you'll actually, like, get wet down there whenever you're aroused.
Interesting.
Well, Zach, you don't have to worry. It's more straight now. I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, basically the attitude people have about people that are attracted to trans people, it's fucking rude. I mean, you know, I've seen people feel ashamed, and one dude said to me he once slept with a trans woman. He said he was confused and shit, and I just said, dude, you shouldn't really care like what other people think, because people don't think. Like, it's something Kanye West once said, and it was genius. So when it comes to people's attitudes about dating trans people, I mean, if you're attracted to trans people, nobody cares. Or at least they shouldn't care. And if someone says you're gross for doing it, tell them to eat a dick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know, but
I don't know. I don't really care. You're gonna fall in love with whatever you fall in love with.
Yeah. She can make certain men question whether they're bi. She confuses your dick because her gender's a lie. And she only reveals what she wants you to see.
I've got to put my bird away. There's a big bird that's like eyeing off.
Alright.
Yeah. Hey, I actually say that's actually a real song that I actually did for Free Kyrgyzstan Press.
I saw that. I was dead.
You thought it was funny?
Yes, like my sides left the building even more than when Owen said, "What's so funny about a woman with a penis?"
Yeah, it was a genius lyric. He wrote a really good lyric. Free FKP wrote a really good thing. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. Really good song. Really funny song.
Yeah. Zach, are you all right? You look like you look like you're dead inside. You all right, man?
Google it says Aspie makes Saiyomi wetter than holy water.
Oh my god.
Saiyomi, quit masturbating to Aspie's face.
Can't help it. It's the hormones. I blame them.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just pondering right now. I mean, is that for real? Like, Blair White really hasn't gotten rid of her male genitalia?
No, she said she wasn't going to get rid of it.
Yeah, because she says she just thinks it's gross to, the whole surgery and everything, because basically I think when you get that that vagina and stuff, when you do the surgery, you have to like use like this weird thing that
you have to dilate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that for?
It's a wound that tries to heal itself, whereas a real vagina does not.
So
wait, is that permanent? Do they have to dilate it till the day they die?
Yep.
Pretty regularly, yeah. That's why
that kind of confirms that. That kind of confirms that her boyfriend is definitely bi. Then.
No shit, we knew that before. Look at those arms on Blair White.
Yeah, I mean,
how would you want to fuck a woman who looks like that could beat you at arm wrestling?
I know. She got the set of arms on her mate.
All right.
I don't know. I've beaten arm wrestling a guy that was like 3 times my size once before. Of course, most of his body weight was fat, though.
Kind of my thing with a woman that I really like, kind of feeling stronger and being in charge when I'm getting it on with them. It's just kind of a thing, I don't know.
Okay, let me ask Loudmouth a awkward question. No, I'm not. No.
Oh, go for it.
Go for it, Longer.
All right.
Life's too short, man. Go
I'll
for
tell you
it.
to fuck yourself if I don't want to answer it.
It's already cancer anyways.
All right, I'm missionary or doggy style.
I'm gonna answer that question.
I'm not answering that.
Missionary.
What the fuck?
What?
Read the chat, y'all.
Okay, I'll read it. Okay, Google it says, Zach, stop flirting with Saiyomi, you perv. You son of a bitch.
He's funny. He's really funny.
I don't know how he found Mjollnir Man's channel, and then I guess he just started subbing to all of our channels, and he's been trolling the shit out of our streams ever since. I think that's what brought us all closer together is a cancerous podcast.
He or she, I don't know.
It's just reading the chat.
But that person seems.
It's probably it's a guy.
Did you just assume it's gender? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I can't go. It's 2017,
Women are not that funny.
You can't go around assuming people's genders.
I'm joking. Everybody went silent all of a sudden. Awkward silence.
I guess
Mjollnir Man understands it all, guys.
I guess that now confuses me more
I guess
how to
be
address.
You remember those commercials, the most interesting man in the world commercials?
Yeah.
One of them could probably be he can actually make traps.
Yeah.
He is the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah. Trap.
I guess
there's some people that
keep going.
Yeah, the most interesting trap in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, Blair White, her motto is I'm not a trap, I'm an ambush.
Haha.
That's actually really funny.
That's like
Google it. Are you still trolling us, or are you really a woman?
I actually like it whenever someone calls me a lady boy. No, seriously, like those lady boys in Thailand, those fucking bitches are fucking hot. I would bang one.
So that's what's wrong with this authoritarian nature, saying that because because you've obviously heard my story. So hopefully, like you've kind of I've given people like something to think about, like just a different perspective. More, even though a lot of people here are probably atheists, so they probably wouldn't believe in like the cosmic sort of perspective, or like pagan mythology or whatever that I use to kind of, I guess, explain what I am to other people. But what was I going to say? I got lost in that train of thought then. It was yeah, that's what this universal standard of saying, you know, this is what you can say to a trans person, this is what you can't. It's like, because after hearing you say, you know, I like being called a lady boy, but then, you know, all these people are going to say, you know, you never ever call someone that, and it's I just wish people could, like, any sort of dissident kind of you know, deviance from like sexuality, you know, like we have the right to really express ourselves, and that kind of activism, it's really undermining it's making us seem like we're one big homogenous kind of mass, whereas, you know, we like everyone's so different.
It's confirmed apparently it's confirmed Google it is a she apparently. And the last thing that she has said was Zach sucks off tranny hookers along with Mjollnir sliced tranny pussy.
Yeah.
Wait,
What the fuck?
That's a sentence.
Mjollnir.
You guys do some weird shit then.
Me and Zach go way back.
Zach, I didn't know you and Mjollnir Man ran like that. I didn't know.
Shit.
No,
I didn't know you and
Scorpio.
Mjollnir Man. I didn't know you guys were into that.
You're breaking up again, by the way, S-Man.
S-Man, buddy, you got to get off that frontier. You got to get something better, bro.
For fuck's sake, come on.
Yeah.
That should be Scorpio pussy, not
What the fuck do you recommend then?
Slashing that Scorpio, please. Mjollnir was my man. I don't even fucking know you, homie.
Hey, does anybody here watch? Hey, does anybody here watch anime? Because I am recommend a really good one. It's called Anohana.
I don't really like anime besides like Inuyasha.
My favorite anime of all time is called Grave of the Fireflies.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Well, how long is it? Is it like short? Is it? It's not One Piece, is it?
Grave of the Fireflies?
Yeah.
It's a movie from the 80s.
Because One Piece
anime
there's
movie.
like, yeah, because One Piece there's like 800 episodes now.
Oh, I know. That's ridiculous.
Or another one I really loved. You ever see one called Barefoot Gin?
No.
Yeah, no.
What's it about?
From the early 80s, it's about the bombing of Hiroshima. It's by far the most disturbing movie I've ever seen in my fucking life. Like, when I first saw it, I couldn't sleep for weeks.
Oh, God.
What's it called again? What's it called again?
Barefoot Gin, and it shows every horrific detail of what it was like to have been there when Hiroshima was bombed.
Was that an anime?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I've seen that because they actually played that at school when we were learning about that.
Yeah. I'm like, holy shit. It just traumatized me when I saw that movie.
Really? Is that bad? Is it any worse than Where the Dead Go to Die?
Where the Dead Go to Die is a piece of shit made by a sadistic asshole. The violence seemed to be there for a purpose. It was trying to really drill into the audience what this event was, okay? Really drilling that all the people who died there weren't just numbers, they were human beings. And it really was emphasizing that point for the audience in horrific detail. All right.
And speaking of which, do you think that the bombing? Do you believe that the Japanese were victims in that? Because given the circumstances, I don't think they were. They're at war with us, and I think compared to to what an invasion would have entailed, I think it was
I mean, the bombing was the right thing to do. All right, given the horrific other alternative. But it's still important to realize what happened, really, to have it shoved in your face like that movie does.
Here's what I think. Citizens are different from politicians.
The disturbing images in that movie are just unbelievable. You see, like, people, like, half-burned, walking around like zombies. You see, oh, my God, dead babies. Oh, my God, that movie.
What was it called again? Barefoot Gimp?
Barefoot Gin, yes. A movie that doesn't fuck around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chat, holy shit. But yeah,
I mean, like, war in general, it's just like a struggle of conflict between the common man and politicians with agendas.
Well, yeah, but that's another thing I really liked about the movie is the movie places its anger at this event outright about the destruction, not on the Americans who dropped the bomb, but on the Japanese government for refusing to surrender. It really does. There are numerous scenes where Gen's father is angry at the Japanese government, at the empire, for not surrendering and putting their society through all this misery.
So he's basically saying the Americans would have never done this to us if you would have just surrendered to them.
Exactly. Like it even says, when you see all these people like moaning when they hear Japan surrendered after the bombing, this woman just looks at them and says, "Why now? Why not before all this?"
Well,
right. And it's kind of pointing out all that could have been avoided had they surrendered.
It's kind of like Vietnam, right? So when a bunch of people got shipped off to some fucking middle of the jungle of a country they couldn't point out on a map, a lot of people started turning to heroin, started shooting up heroin a lot. So a big fear when these American troops would come back is that there would be like a bunch of raving bands of heroin junkies. But they found out that they pretty much just stopped use altogether because it's the circumstances they're in that they're trying to escape, not so much that they decided to do this. So I think
really heroin's a very it has a horrible withdrawal.
I know, but the rate dropped as soon as they got back to the States. So I guess they either buried it or
they just buried it, I guess.
Or were forced to if they were short on base or something. I don't know, but
that's actually very likely as well.
Yeah,
there was rampant drug usage across that entire country where U.S. installations were. They came back and they were pretty much straight edge because they were in a familiar place that they wanted to be. So that's why I kind of go back to, you know, war is pretty much just politicians having a dick measuring contest. That's really all it boils down to.
And another thing people don't know about the bombings is Japan actually offered ceasefires months before the bombings, and America turned them down, saying nothing was acceptable except unconditional surrender. Nothing else was acceptable.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree with that because obviously it's going to lead to another North Korea. That I don't think
that's what they were afraid of. That's why they said unconditional surrender or nothing else.
Yeah, and
plus you need to take it from a strategic angle too. That's pretty close to Russia.
Yeah.
Man, that man keeps dropping like a fly.
Yeah.
I think it might be because the stream is overloaded. I mean, that's kind of what usually happens with S-Man. He cannot really hardly get his mic to work when there are so many people.
But what I find so amazing, though, about Japan today is they're one of the most peaceful countries on the planet. They have one of the lowest crime rates on Earth, today. And yet, just a few decades ago, their history was so incredibly barbarous. It's amazing just how much that nation's entire culture, entire zeitgeist can change in such a short period of time like that.
Yeah, I mean, Japan still has its problems. Like
every nation has its problems.
Yeah, but true. But Japan is a relatively peaceful. Although one aspect of them, like I think Black Pigeon praises them for this, is that they're very, how you should say, xenophobic. They don't like foreigners coming into their country. They're very touchy about that. And if foreigners do come in, they usually have a rough time getting work, and they're very picky. About who comes into the country.
Japan is like 99% ethnically Japanese. Like there are whites and blacks who have Japanese citizenships, but there are very few of them. There's probably they make up only like a few million people in a country of like 130 million. All right, the vast majority of the country is like of one ethnic mix. Where it's totally different than in America, which is very multi-ethnic.
The other thing I don't like about Japan is how they destroy the ocean wildlife. I mean, if it moves, it's food in the ocean. That's basically they eat everything. They whale, they do fish.
Well, what do we do to cows and chickens, man?
We at least
it changes from place to place. I mean, most parts in India you'll never see meat. There's only certain states that serve meat, and eating a cow, that's you wouldn't even think to do
But
that
it-
there.
Well,
So
the
it just
American
changes.
agriculture keep going. Well, the American agriculture is pretty bad. I don't think it's anything on par with what the Japanese do to the natural wildlife. What we do is we raise They raise cows on like very bad living circumstances.
Yeah,
but
there's certain like ethical conditions of farm animals that I have a problem with.
I'm not going vegan. I'm not going vegan.
I'm not going
I'd rather-
vegan either, but I do believe that they should improve the condition of farm animals, even if it would lead to higher meat prices.
Yeah. Also,
Mjollnir Man, are you a vegan or a vegetarian?
I went vegan for the first 3 months of this year, and I have to say that I probably felt healthier than I ever did. But I kind of want to go back to veganism, to be honest. I don't know. There's just something about it. Like, I don't feel as groggy or tired as drained. Like, my energy kind of stayed the same. I felt like, because I struggle with a lot of vitamin deficiencies, especially like vitamin D. If I skip a day on medication, I have some really weird thoughts, and like I like go way into depression. So like, I don't know. It's like I kind of finally felt normal in a capacity, and I think that's what I liked about it.
Somebody called the amateur artist in the chat is calling us all snowflakes.
What happened?
Okay.
Probably
Oh,
12.
yeah, you won't hear anybody in this chat saying, "Keep your hate speech out of this campus."
That's
yeah. Why
awesome.
did somebody call us snowflakes? Because we're not vegans.
Probably.
I don't know. I mean, we have
Snowflakes.
a pretty diverse group of people here in this chat, I would say.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
would-
this amateur artist, you're a cuntflake.
Conflict.
You know, if I ever went
Oh.
anytarian, I would be a pescatarian because scientifically pescatarians are the healthiest of all like diets.
Actually, could you run me through that? Because I'm not familiar with that in the slightest.
Pescatarian is a person that eats nothing but vegetables and some fish.
Okay, yeah. I actually went to high school with a girl who only ate like chicken and fish and vegetables. Like, she didn't eat red meat, didn't eat pork. I mean, I don't eat pork. I just don't trust it. That's me. But
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't be wrong in that. I mean, I'm not saying this as somebody who refuses to eat pig, because I do eat bacon and any other pig product occasionally. But the thing is about pig meat in general is that it's one of the least healthiest options out there.
Zach will be the
I mean,
Christian.
particularly bacon and pork chops. But at the same time, it's
I
also
eat more
one of the
chicken.
tastiest, so it's practically irresistible. There's this one guy, I cannot remember what his name is exactly. Damn it, I wish I could remember the name of his channel. But he's a guy he's a bodybuilder that makes response videos to vegan gains. And he's actually one of the few meat-eating bodybuilders that vegan gains actually respects. I wish I could remember his name. He's a bald guy. Damn it, I wish dying to remember his name again. But this is a bodybuilder that doesn't eat any pig. He just mainly, when it comes to meat, he eats eggs, fish, chicken, and occasionally he'll eat red meat.
This chat is so cancerous, Zach.
What?
Google
This
it
chat
knows
is
how to
so
derail any chat. I've noticed.
Yeah. Oh god, Zach likes Mjollnir meat. Fuck you. Google it.
One time he said he accused Zach of having sex with Riley Dennis, Trilogic, and Roman Millennial. It was hilarious.
Oh, come and get some kangaroo meat.
I mean, if Zach were to have sex with Trilogic, I'm pretty sure Zach would probably like turn his head away from it.
I can't make gross sex jokes about other YouTubers because Probably Bearing will watch this stream and might take it out of context and put it in a video.
So, the stuff you've said about roaming millennial will make him would probably
I
make
wouldn't give a
her
fuck.
would pass out.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
Fuck off, dude.
I know. I played along too. Yeah, I know.
You
well,
said
know,
the same
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
You
All
said
you gotta say,
about roaming millennial. Fuck off. Okay.
all you gotta say on the street to get Bearing
all I
rolling.
said was fap. That's all I said. That's all I said.
No, you said worse than that. Come on.
Give me an example. Give me an example. Citation needed.
I'm not gonna repeat stuff you've said, but you've said worse than that. But never mind. Come on.
Quit lying. I never
But
said
anyway,
anything worse than that. I can't remember me saying anything worse than I really
You
can't.
did when we weren't live. I
I
remember. you
probably
were not.
said worse than that.
All you gotta say to get Bearing
Okay.
rolling is that you had passionate gay love with the atheist gamer. Also, is there like a? Oh, that'd be a fun person to debate. Oh, we gotta get him on a stream. Oof.
Atheist gamer, that'd be funny.
Oh,
I'm Mjollnir Man in the chat.
Okay, the name of the guy that I was talking about, Bios3 Training is the name of the guy's channel. Jerry Ward is his name. That was the bodybuilder that I was talking about. Yeah, he goes making response videos to vegan gains, talking about how it kind of varies as far as people's health goes and whether or not they would. Okay, you know, you hear all the stories about how some people say that they gone on the vegan lifestyle and their health basically plummeted. Andy Worski would be an example of that. And Jerry Ward, in one of his response videos to vegan gains, he says it's about genetics as far as how much your body would be able to tolerate the vegan
Lifestyle.
diet. Yeah, the vegan lifestyle, the vegan diet, and how much.
I'll be right
healthier
back,
it
you
would
guys.
be
I'm
for
gonna
you
watch
to
one of his
eat meat
videos.
for you to eat, and how healthy it would be for you to stay eating meat compared to if that same person was to go vegan. And Jerry Ward, he mentioned about how his own dad, basically 70 or I think it's mid 70s or something, and he goes describing of how he basically eats like about a pound of bacon and a pound of ground beef a day, and he's like healthy and on his feet, not on a cane or anything. Just as an anecdotal example of somebody who can like eat crap loads of meat and there won't be like total utter shit.
Well, I mean, I'm lactose intolerant, and I feel the urge to throw up if I have anything with dairy in it. So that's out of the equation. But I noticed with high amounts of meat, I have that same feeling. Now, when I was on a vegan diet, like the proportions I was giving myself, they never felt too little and they never felt too much. It was like just the right amount of food. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm stuffed. Like it was just like the right amount of food.
Yeah, I know a friend who is vegetarian, just mostly because she doesn't like the taste and texture of meat purely. I mean, it's not from
She's a lesbian.
No, she's straight, but yeah, she just doesn't like eating chicken, beef, or any other food meat. Man, we're not talking about sex meat, all right?
It was a joke. Loudmouth inspired me because he was talking. Anyway, but yeah, Mjollnir Man, Google is really pissed at you and Zach in the chat.
Okay, why?
Zach likes Mjollnir meat. Mjollnir Man is probably bi. Google it also says, Saiyomi, tell Zach to shut the fuck up. Yeah, I noticed that I ramble on quite a bit. I mean,
Talk about
I tried to. Sorry, what?
What was this stream about, gender or something?
Yeah.
That's what originally was.
Like every time I join a stream, it just like goes way out of hand and off topic.
Me and Mjollnir Man have had 2 near 5-hour streams. We were supposed to talk about capital punishment. We talked about it for like 90 minutes and veered off the rest of the time. We talked about libertarianism for like 30 minutes the next stream, and then after that, it was just who knows where the fuck it went. But it went like 1,000 miles outside of libertarianism.
I kind of feel like at the end of the day, like, I don't know, like the transgender debate is kind of like, there's not much really to go into. It's like you're either set in your ways or you're able to be convinced to another side. It's not like I don't really see it too much as a complex type of debate. I mean, I don't know. Like, what have you guys been over? Because I probably started watching this probably around 7 p.m.
Yeah,
It's
because
more
I think
about
I
like
was.
gender and the gender spectrum and all that other stuff.
Bullshit.
Anybody,
Well,
like,
Yeah.
anybody talk about like bathrooms and stuff? Because that was a big.
Oh, that.
big,
big
deal
I
for
know
a
how to
while.
solve that problem. We get rid of the whole signs on the bathroom shit, so we can just get and basically it's a way to pretty much politely telling everyone to grow the hell up, and else it's just a place where we take a piss and shit, wash our hands, hopefully, move on with our lives. And like, I got so sick of the bathroom thing, like, oh my god, anytime anyone would bring it up, I'd have to leave the room because of how fucking annoying it is.
Because like the way
And I ended up losing my
personally-
cool at somebody because.
Yeah, and talking about the whole bathroom debate and reflecting back on it, about a year from when, okay, back then I used to think that yes, we should legislate to keep the genders separate from each other, so that anybody who just
Segregation.
yeah, basically gender segregation, so that to make sure that any man, biological man, just claiming they are a woman does not go into the woman's bathroom unless you actually get the transition. But now, about a year later, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, conservatives all in all are kind of handling that issue incorrectly, I would say, because the position that I take now is just let people do whatever they want with their private property. I mean, if they want to segregate the gender, if people want to segregate the genders, if they want to, that's their prerogative with their private property. If they don't, if they want to put everybody in basically one open bathroom, that's okay too. But if people don't feel comfortable with that, don't expect them to go to your business because you will not provide them a sufficient type of bathroom.
Yeah, personally, the way I always thought.
By the way, Zach, before.
There should just be like a hallway just full of like unisex bathrooms, but they're just like individual stalls with like a door.
Yeah.
That would be the easiest solution, Mjollnir, so that everybody, all the bathrooms are just unisex. Nobody is called transphobic by the SJW community, and nobody is fearful of sexual assault on the right.
Yeah, and by the way,
you seen No Bullshit's video on transgender in the military? He claimed that people would go through gender transitions just to be given lower standards to join the military. Yeah, I'm sure really someone would do all that to them just to get in the military. Really?
Citation fucking needed. By the way, Zach, please do the Lonely Wolf method and put a sock over your mic because you're raping everybody's ears. Anyway, yeah, like that video from No Bullshit really convinced me that he was a fucking moron.
I know he was video on vegan before that, but yeah, he gets worse and worse. Like with each video, he gets dumber and dumber.
Yeah, and to Mjollnir Man, you wouldn't be missing out on much when you see a No Bullshit video. Like, for instance, like I started losing respect for him when he made that video back in June about veganism and shit to respond to the whole vegan debate challenge, and holy fuck was his logic idiotic. And
he made vegan gains look good.
He made vegan gains look like a rational person, and you know you fucked up bad when you make vegan gains look awesome.
No.
I mean,
yeah, this is the guy that dressed up as Roy Millennial and tried to fuck a cucumber.
Yeah,
he made that guy look good.
That was the most passionate thing I've ever seen someone a couple months back.
You didn't see that?
Yeah, vegan
No,
gains.
I did.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
Vegan gains was passionately sucking off a cucumber, and he looked like he was enjoying it. So I almost vomited when I saw that.
Dressed up as Roy Millennial,
the fuck?
And he started like blowing a cucumber.
It's kind of weird. I don't really.
And I mean, like,
I don't really give a fuck about
passion
anymore.
All right, yeah,
You don't give a fuck about what?
Huge,
like YouTube.
Edit for Roy Millennial, basically. It's,
Hey, what? I'm trying to hear what Mjollnir was saying. What you don't give a fuck about anymore?
It's just like hit a certain point. I don't know. I don't really care about YouTube drama anymore. It's like the least appealing thing to me. I don't know why. It just kind of seems like, to me personally, when you're calling shots on people, like, it just kind of seems like it's just like a quest for numbers. Because like people are obviously gonna see, like, if you make a video, like I'm not even gonna lie. When I started poking Brett Keane with the stick, I solely did it because I knew people were gonna flock to my channel. Like now, I really don't care who or how many people watch my stuff. So
yeah, I remember I've watched Mjollnir Man's YouTube drama anthology video playlist. Sticks were to Brett Keane, and I'm like, I can't blame him. People like to mock Brett Keane. If I were in Mjollnir Man's shoes, I probably would have done it too.
You're breaking up again, S-Man. You're sounding like really slow and robotic.
And it looks like his first and last words were Dorn.
Okay,
Brett
I think you got back.
Keane. But yeah.
S-Man, you probably couldn't have noticed this, but your audio was sounding very
for fuck's
slow
sake.
and robotic.
no, you're fine now. You're fine now. Chill out. Chill out.
Yeah, you were just sounding like a retarded robot for a second.
Retarded robot.
Anyway, so you know, I'm
as far back on the gender debate, really, I don't care enough about this subject. The only reason he's gone again to try to get his audio back, but really, it is kind of pointless. And honestly, I get bored with this topic. I'd rather be reading up Forbes magazine articles about economics and reading up a whole bunch of blogging articles talking about how gender is determined by one's feelings. Like, come on. The only reason why gender is brought up so much is because of how it's politicized, of how people want to legislate on it and call people bigots for not agreeing with them. Like Owen McDonald, for example, will call Aspie, S-Man, and myself transphobic just for not accepting the gender spectrum as scientific and factual.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's just one big giant wedge issue to make yourself look separate from the other people. I mean, like, what traditionally Democrats pander to minority communities. They did with, you know, the gay community, but that's not an issue anymore. So I'm thinking, like, you know, what happens after transgender issues are not a debate anymore? You know, are we going to move on to polygamy or, you know, stuff like that? It's just like, there's different social issues to kind of keep up with appearances that, oh, we're kind of different. So if you're for this, just kind of slide to this side and vote for us this year.
Yeah,
All
I mean,
right,
I think
guys, see you later.
Alrighty.
I'll see you later.
Bye-bye, Loudmouth.
Yeah,
I'll
I mean,
have you
the
on for
biggest,
another stream.
I guess the reason why, I mean, obviously from personal experience, I'll obviously have an interest in that, but I guess my mission is to try to restore some sort of relatability back to the issue so that it doesn't become sort of politicized, that it's just, you know, all it is, it's really a quest for identity, but the gender part of it is only one small part of the identity. And what I get very, very concerned when I listen to people who are sort of in that non-binary community. Like there's kind of like Milo Stewart, and there's a whole bunch, they sit around in a circle and they introduce themselves, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, you know, demigirl, and then my pronouns are Z, them, and then they move around the circle, and I'm thinking, and it was just it was very hard to watch them identify themselves in such a narrow kind of way, because, you know, when it comes to, because that's the way I perceive identity. I mean, like, even though, yes, I'm going through like a, you know, I've always had to go through a bit of a weird thing, you know, in that way, like being dissident in that way, that there's a feeling of being kind of stranded and not being really given any particular type of gendered type of direction in the way that my personality works or the way my psyche works. But at the same time, like the identity encapsulates so many more things. Like you think about, you know, your achievements, your interests and everything like that. Like that's what should come first. Like I should be able to say, you know, my name's Troy or Lonely Wolf. Like, you know, I majored in maths and these are the books that I read and these are the people who inspire the way I think. And then, you know, by the way, I happen to be like asexual, and And I only bring up the topic of asexuality just so that it kind of towards sexuality to other people, because when you're removed out of the equation, you kind of have a different perspective on, I guess, sexual behavior, because you're looking at it from a bird's eye view, from a removed objective standpoint. And that's why I talk about porn a little bit, about some of the metaphors or the artistry behind porn, because you're looking at it through an aesthetic lens rather than the sexual responsiveness lens.
Yeah.
Google it in the chat says, Owen faps to granny tranny porn, Saiyomi, Karl Marx, and has a hate boner for War Corpse. Actually, I think he has a hate boner for Aspie at this point, more or less. I mean, ever since that debate. Zach likes tranny faggots. Wrap up the stream. Wrap up the stream. Well, I do feel like that the stream is kind of starting to slow down here a bit.
Yeah,
but
how much do you like tranny faggots?
Who knows anymore? I mean, I just found out in this stream that fucking Blair White has a dick still.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Loudmouth. You should have shut your loud mouth, you fucking loudmouth.
Well, then it wouldn't be, true to his name, so...
Yeah,
I
I want these people to just read a little bit more and just go back maybe through history to understand themselves a bit better. And like, you don't have to go for like, because I'm just approaching things from a more cosmic perspective to understand myself. I mean, that's just the personal quest for identity. I mean, that's really my personal thing. But the way that everyone sort of latches onto this, I don't know, there's something off about the way in which they latch onto these particular identities and kind of hold onto them so tightly. And when the identity is so much broader than, what of these particular names and pronouns, and we have to be realistic. They're not going to absorb into the English language. Like, the only words are maybe if you could call yourself a eunuch, saying, or maybe my personality has a bit of an androgynous side to it, because those are words that are accepted in the English language. But all these other things, it's like, realistically, they're not going to be absorbed into the English language very fast. It takes time.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to just ask a question before we wrap this up, because it's been my contention for quite a while.
Okay.
People who tend to cling on to like a separate gender identity, I don't know, the list is ever expanding. I think the last time I stopped was like 72 genders or something. But would you maybe go on to say, like, perhaps these people don't really, or haven't really forged an identity for themselves, and maybe that's why they cling so hard onto this? Or
that could be, that could be a big part of it, because I can see the lack of self-identification when I look at these channels, like, and that's all they talk about. They talk about this, they talk about this, whatever, the demigirl or demiguy, and when their identity is so much focused and it's so much wrapped in this particular identity, then I think it's a matter of developing yourself, not wrapping yourself in this identity like sexuality or gender, going that way, but maybe more broadly going sideways. So start to incorporate everything else into your identity and maybe look at it from a different perspective. So, and that takes a lot of reading. I mean, like, a lot of things, like with gender textbooks, they don't cite things that are, they cite things that are so recent rather than going back to maybe the ancient historical past to understand cycles throughout history.
So what you were basically saying is that people's unified gender is what gives them purpose?
Well, I mean, kind of in a way, but I was saying, like, maybe they don't feel as though they really have an identity of their own, so maybe they kind of cling on to this, because, everybody thinks, like, oh, I'm different from everybody else, which is, I guess, true to some extent, but some people, like, try so hard to be unique.
They need to get a freaking hobby. Like, I have too many hobbies, and there are too many other bigger issues out there in the world for me to be anywhere near concerned about, hey, what gender am I actually? How masculine or feminine am I? Like, I don't give a fuck. And honestly, this subject just...
It's really a personal quest, really, that everyone's going, but we've turned the personal into something that's very, very political. And I think that, like, for the people that I'm talking about who identify as I guess a dissident type of sexual persona, that you know, I think they should be opposed to all of these laws and regulations and things like that and protection, because, you know, every generation has to define itself and has to assert itself on its own terms, and that's not going to be achieved. Like the independence or the dignity or freedom of anyone is never ever going to be achieved by having this paternalistic type thing. I mean, it's a very strange thing to see that, because, you know, generations before, I mean, we've all had our quarrels with you know, going against culture or whatever, or fighting against something. You know, every generation, like the 60s generation had to fight against certain Generation X, we had to, you know, fight against things like that. But now we're kind of at a stage now, it's going the opposite way. Instead of, you know, differentiating ourselves from the it's, you know, latching on the current you know, paternal figures for sort of this protection. Now the police force, of course, like protection or you know, from violence or anything like that, or any sort of discrimination. But like, as far as everything else goes, it's really a personal quest for identity, and that's really shouldn't be made into a political or any sort of political agitation should ever be tied to that, nor should the need for a paternalistic kind of authority figure for protection. And that's blocking their own quest and their freedom in themselves to be able to define themselves as a generation. That was a bit of a rant.
Yeah, I mean, you are definitely the one being Joel here on this stream, Lonely Wolf. I mean, whenever I try to be intellectual, it just ends up being a ramble more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what my mission is. It's I mean, some people are going to look at me and say, "Oh, you've got internalized transphobe." I mean, I'm not even transphobe. I mean, even though that, yes, I would have been preferred to be in the body of a woman. That would have been better. But yeah, a lot of people are going to try to look at that the way that I'm kind of rebelling against the current, I guess, the politicization of, you know, non-binary and all that. But it's but at the same time, I have to have the freedom to identify, you know, the way that I want and to kind of assert myself. But, you know, at the same time, I mean, I'm just trying to steer the conversation. I mean, they can make these sort of, you know, I guess these identities or these forms of dissidence, you know, to make it a little bit more relatable to the public and to bring some, I guess, sense, like to get the politics out of it and to just bring a bit of sense, so that maybe people who haven't thought about it before, maybe they have something to think about if I present it in a different way.
Get the politics out of gender. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, when I watched your video, it made more sense to me than like any of the other people that tend to be. I don't want to like associate you with them, like these are my pronouns, but like as an outsider looking in, that's pretty much all I see. And then I see you, and it kind of is on a more personal level. So it made a bit more sense to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the mission. I mean, hopefully that it gives people like food for thought. At least it has people thinking about the conversation. At least it kind of livens the conversation, because up until now, the conversation has been as dull as shit. It's like all this, you know, it's restricted to science and gender theory or feminist ideology. And I don't even look at either of those things. Like, I'm kind of swerving away from like any of that and just looking at it from my own kind of perspective.
Yeah, and you say that people will say that you have supposedly internalized transphobia, or that you are just basically flat out transphobic. And that the definition of a phobia has been hijacked so much. Like, a phobia means an irrational fear of insert noun. And now it means the irrational fear plus the intolerance of insert noun. But, and Owen has hijacked it even more. Like, you're transphobic if you even enable transphobia. If you spout out rhetoric that is that supposedly enables true transphobes. Like he'll accuse S-Man supposedly of being transphobic just because he freaking speaks against the gender spectrum. And if anybody speaks against the gender spectrum, that will be feeding the rhetoric of people who actually do seek to kill transgender people.
But why are they in the same umbrella? Like, why are we? I mean, because because for me the gender spectrum is just like because I can use the word binary, okay, because the reason why is because I think of alchemy as like you know, there's masculinity and femininity, so those are the alchemic kind of elements that we have. So I can't really see whether there's a third element that we can yeah, from that point of view, it's like, you know, even if you start with the binary and saying there's two ingredients, like we are, like in our personalities, it's an alchemic type process that makes us all very unique in the way that we're mixing the two elements together. But I don't see, that's why I use the word binary, because there are two elements, but they are combining in very different ways, and it makes us very different from each other.
Oh yeah.
But it's still like there's the two core ingredients, or the two core elements in terms of alchemy that we're still operating with. So unless someone can show me a third ingredient that happens, then, you know, I'm just satisfied with just associating with the binary and putting myself in that position there and just relegating, you know, the distance that I have as part of my personality.
S-Man really wants me to read the chat right now. Okay, fine, S-Man. Jeez. Okay. Saiyomi tells Zach to shut the fuck up. Shut up, Mjollnir the queer. Calling you queer. Are you bi? I do not know who that question would be directed to from Google it. Zach is bi for Blair. Well, like I said, who knows anymore? In this day and age of sex, who knows if anyone is bi? For all we know, everybody has a little bit of gay in them.
Well, actually, in ancient Rome, I can't remember the emperor. I think it was Nero Caesar, but he was seen as odd for being heterosexual. I mean, being bisexual is actually quite socially acceptable in those times.
Okay. Wrap up the stream. End the stream. Pretend it ain't there. Saiyomi's laugh is sexy as fuck, Google it says. It's confirmed. Google it is lesbian. Saiyomi is bae as fuck. Lonely Wolf has the facts, says Google it. Yeah, Lonely Wolf.
I'm getting off light.
You're getting off what?
I got off very light from Google. It's been quite good to me. Like I got off lightly, I think.
Zach makes Saiyomi drier than Mjolnir's scalp.
I hit my head a lot.
I'm not that fucking ugly. Google it. Fuck you. Okay. So one other thing that I want to bring up is that you saw my one video talking about making a response to Science Plus, right, Lonely Wolf?
Making a response to who?
Science Plus. That one guy, that one hipster-looking guy that had the bit of a scruff and the comb to the side hairdo. What
is Science Plus?
Well, that's the name of the channel that I was responding to. The name of the video was Gender Spectrum Bullcrap Debunked, and basically I was responding to the guy and how baseless with his claims about the gender spectrum. Like, I tried to research on the well, okay, yeah. Anyway, just to remind you of what the video is, I want you to remind us what you think of that video. You said some comment on there saying that you do not think it is 100% based off of chromosomes and genitalia genderism.
Yeah, because I thought that I don't know, because I've had a different perspective of gender or whatever, because the biological sex, it's all observable, and even when someone goes through a transition, like I'd say that biologically someone becomes very androgynous, because if they have the hormones or whatever, they a trans man grows a beard, that's a male characteristic. So there's some respects, physically they become an androgyny rather than, that they can never turn into a biological the whatever sex they want, but certainly there is part biological transition but that has to be with hormones and science, etc. But then the perception of gender, I assume that gender was the way the hormones, whatever, how they affect our behavior. They make certain people more masculine, and they affect their sexuality, and and it certainly affects our behavior. But there's also with gender, there might be but I might be talking about personality or sexual personae or or expression rather than gender itself. But someone's said that gender is a bit of the nature versus nurture type of thing. So partly biological, partly, I guess, cultural. But yeah, I'm not sure about that. Like, I can't really come to a conclusion.
You cannot come to a solid conclusion about whether the gender spectrum exists or not. That's what you're saying?
No, because it's yeah, it's kind of hard. I think it's easy. I think the reason why people use it that way is because it's easier to conceptualize like a straight line, or think about like if we associate like masculinity as being like blue and then femininity being red, like, but then, you know, sometimes we're going to mix those two colors a little bit. So you've got two colors, but they're going to be mixed a little bit. So right in the middle, you'll have purple. But the thing is, I'm not really sure how to define gender anymore, because the term's kind of being used in such different ways. So I'm kind of undecided whether or not that's actually gender itself. But I'd say that personality-wise, or perhaps the, I guess what I call sexual personae, or maybe the gendered part of our personality, I do agree that that exists on a spectrum, just because of the fact that we can have our two elements and we can mix them up in different proportions. And that's what makes us all different. So some people are more masculine and, you know, they take up masculine hobbies or whatever, whereas some are a little bit more feminine in the way that they behave. So maybe the expression itself of gender, you know, maybe that in itself exists on a spectrum. But as for the gender itself,
if I can quickly interject, I would agree that the gender spectrum exists as far as between masculine and feminine goes, like very masculine and very feminine, but that's personality. That isn't actual observable sex. Again, I mean, but when people say gender spectrum, they are talking about, or the SJWs are trying to push for the gender spectrum, trying to apply it to being more, that there are more than two sexes, that there's not just male and female, that there is Fa'afafine, Samoa, and other stuff. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason why it's a sense of androgyny or being the kind of stranded eunuch type archetype, and that I identify with people who are non-binary, but that word itself, to my ears, that just sounds like a vulgar word to use. Like I absolutely, and the word cis, like I absolutely hate that word as well. I despise it. But I guess the reason why I can kind of identify with that is because, you know, it's because I guess the two ingredients of masculinity and femininity, or the two alchemic type elements, you know, because they were mixed in such a even proportion, like a 50-50 proportion, you know, somewhere in the unconscious or somewhere in the psyche, that's what causes that sort of fracture. So it gives you the feeling that you may belong to a certain gender, but that's what it is. It remains within the psyche, and it remains as a personal spiritual crest rather than something that materializes into scientific, you know, observable evidence, because, you know, this is part of the psyche, it's part of the personality, and these are things that don't translate into science. It's like, and the idea of people trying to prove that, you know, that these particular genders exist, it's like the I don't know, like if I tried to do that, like I know that the evidence would be against me, even if I tried to assert that I'm like a non-binary third gender, because we're talking about something that's, you know, subjective in that respect.
Yeah, and to the conclusion of this stream, the question that I had titled at the end, are there more than two genders? I think that we all pretty much agree that there isn't more than two scientifically observable genders, that there are many different types of gender personalities and expressions. But again, that does not determine what pronouns we give to people and what we put on people's birth certificate. And really, that's the other issue with this whole discussion, is doctors assigning genders. No, they are not assigning you genders. They are observing of what gender they are. What is observable about gender so far is what is in between your two newborn chubby little baby legs, and that's how they determine your gender. And this other stupid thing about Science Plus's video is that they were all like, we are taught gender. People are assigned blue and pink. And I'm just thinking to myself, what the fuck? That's not how doctors determine gender. Doctors determine gender by genitalia, what they can like physically observe on the newborn child.
Yeah, I mean,
they do not assign you with colors.
No, like we don't get assigned like certain roles saying that, you know, because you were born a boy, then, you know, society has told you that, you know, this is what you're going to be doing, like whatever, this is going to be the tenets or this is going to be the pattern, because there's certain differences, like even in sexual responsiveness, like it seems like men, like, because I speak as an asexual from a very detached point of view, but from what I can see, like with men, like the big part of male sexuality is the visual responsiveness. So that's why they have the theory of the male gaze. And ever since the Greco-Roman times, it was always like, it might have been a homoerotic Greek type statue, but it was very much a conceptualization process. So sexuality is tied so much to the Western, you know, visualization of things. And that's why they observe so much porn. But then when I saw the eruption of this kind of erotic fiction, like the 50 Shades of Grey, and I saw the responsiveness of women. And so I'm thinking, like, could it be possible that women, they respond sexually in more of an imaginative realm, whereas men are more into a visual realm? Like I'm not going to state that as an assertion. I'm just going to say that's a question that we could put out there into the universe.
Yeah. And again, with the scientifically observable gender, Owen keeps on asking for evidence for the binary. And during lunch, I tried to research about gender being a binary, and I couldn't find hardly any articles. Like most of them are blogs supposedly supporting the gender spectrum. But the thing is that they were so baseless. I mean, the evidence for the binary might be hard to find on the internet, but the way that people determine that there is a binary is off of traditional science, and that is chromosomes and genitalia. It may not be the strongest evidence in the SJW's eyes, but it is certainly stronger than basing gender off of feelings and personality and culture, like they do how to determine that there are more than two genders.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I haven't really looked into the science of it before, because it's I don't know, I don't really see how like something that's very subjective, and for my case, it's more of it's also a spiritual existential type quest for self-identification. So I don't see how that translates into a scientific type proof. Now and I think that very few things are actually provable, especially in every debate we have on YouTube, because we're reasoning by induction. Like we're making observations and then making a suggestion that this could be a thing, but you know, we're not providing a conclusive proof in any type of sense. So I don't really understand how that can be translated into an observable, you know, objective reality. Like especially when I'm not looking at it, I'm looking at it more from a I guess a pagan type of folklore, like when I talk about alchemy, etc. You know, the idea of having two ingredients mixed together to form that part of the personality. So, you know, so that's the framework that I'm using. But then I don't know how that even translates into a scientific type like research process. That's it's beyond me, I think.
Yeah, my conclusion about gender is that we determine it basically off of the combination of genitalia and chromosomes. And if there is a case of intersex, well, I would encourage that either you get the extra chromosomes or extra sex parts removed, or you go ahead and transition to the opposite sex from the one that is on your birth certificate. Like, I don't think really that having the transitioning is necessary unless you have like a birth deformity that intersex complication of some sorts. I mean, if you're doing it otherwise, I mean, it's your liberty, but as far as I'm concerned, it's out of want and not need, and it's just a luxury. I mean, I do not know what your story is, Saiyomi, about your transitioning, but that's the way that I feel about transitioning, is that it's only really needed in kids this intersex.
A need, because gender dysphoria is a medical condition. And transitioning is the treatment for that condition.
Yeah, can people be gender dysphoria?
I agree with that.
Can people not Can people still be gender dysphoric even if they don't have any physical intersex qualities, like a woman born with testes, for example?
Can somebody be gender dysphoric of?
Can somebody be gender dysphoric? Can somebody be gender dysphoric even if they do not have a physical intersex quality?
Sometimes yes.
Okay.
Like, so there'll be a few instances where men will experience, or women will experience gender dysphoria because they're not masculine enough, like in the man's case, and then they'll get testosterone to help them feel better. So it can also be used for that case as well.
Well, you're talking about a man that, or a little boy that doesn't feel masculine enough, and they'll just take testosterone to help settle in with their born gender instead of transitioning.
Yeah. Yeah, it can also be treated as that as well. It's not just for transitioning from one to the other.
Yeah, my political and legal stance as far as transitioning goes is that you have the liberty to go ahead and do whatever you want with your body on them grounds. But my philosophical stance is that it's all in all not needed unless you're born with an intersex condition, or I guess, like you say, if somebody is gender dysphoric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the definition of transgender, that's like you know, because that's being stretched. Because I guess in my case, like
right,
yeah,
transsexual. I guess we gotta use that term instead of transgender. I mean, especially.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because I'm used to hearing that word, or even the word trans, but it just gets stretched. The definition of it has really gotten stretched because people are sort of, now I'm hearing this idea that you can be trans without you don't have to have dysphoria to be trans, and that's the thing with me, because I wouldn't consider myself trans in any type of metric because I don't have enough, like, I guess when I mix those two elements together, I don't have enough femininity to consider that, because it wouldn't like, yes, I maybe preferably it would have been better off if I had been born into the female, but it's not strong enough. That feeling is not strong enough because I must be too in the middle of the spectrum to actually have dysphoria and feel the need to transition into a woman. So I'm kind of in the middle of the road there, maybe slightly towards the feminine side, but yes, but it's not strong enough though. But there's still a implication that you know, you can be trans even if you don't have any sort of dysphoria, and even if you're not like making any sort of transition processes. So yeah, that kind of it confuses me a little bit, that side of it.
It does me too.
So, did you transition because you were dysphoric or because of an intersex condition, Saiyomi? I mean, if I can ask, you can decide not to ask if you want to. I don't mean to be interrogating you.
I think it would kind of be both, because I was already very feminine and I passed even before I took any hormones. So it felt like it was just like the next step to kind of just complete the process, so to speak.
Okay. What made you so sure that you weren't just gay, homosexual?
Physically, I have a lot of female attributes that I have no.
Well, I'm referring to before your transition, of course.
Oh, before my transition?
Yeah. I'm not talking about now. I mean, obviously the transition is already done, but we're talking about before you're transitioning. Like, I'm asking you, why did you transition? And you were saying that you already had feminine qualities. And so I'm asking you for before you're transitioning, with all this in context, are you so sure that you weren't just a gay man, that you weren't just homosexual?
Yeah, being a gay man just never felt like right to me.
All right.
Like, just, yeah. It felt like that wasn't the right path.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really evolving on my position as far as the issue of the whole issue of transgenderism goes. I mean, Owen McDonald hates it when people use the word transgenderism, but I use that word to like encompass the whole issue of transgenders and well, the transitioning process. But yeah, I have quite an evolving position as far as transgenderism goes, because when I was like younger, I was raised in pretty much a Christian conservative echo chamber, and the more and more I get on the internet, the more libertarian-esque and the more open-minded towards atheistic or liberal social issues, and that includes the transgender issue. And
well, I think it's been. I think when success is the diversity, like just the diversity of the panel that we have at the moment, like because especially like because I think we're sort of the main. Like, there's a lot of people who've like contributed, but I think when we consider we have a transgender woman and like me, sort of whatever you want to, whatever I am, like just a like mutant or whatever, and then like Mjollnir Man is kind of like can relate to some of the I guess the paganism that I kind of used, like the astrological perspective, and some of those like people who are like the Milo Stewarts of the world, like maybe they need to like give their birthday to like Mjollnir Man and just say, and I bet that I bet there would be something in their planets that have kind of fractured them a little bit.
Yeah, and
that's a bit out there.
Again, when I did used to live in the Christian conservative echo chamber I was raised up in, I used to have been of the mindset that I wasn't going to refer to somebody who is post-transition by their preferred pronouns. I mean, I was a bit of an asshole in that issue, but ever since that I heard of Blair White, it made me change my mind. I'm all like, okay, yeah, post-stop trans people, just refer to Blair White as she, Saiyomi as she, Riley Dennis I will not refer to as she, because fuck him, he's so disrespectful. I mean, this is the way that you change people's minds, that you be respectful. You don't accuse people of being a bigot. I mean, Owen McDonald can take lessons from this stream of how you shift people's positions on issues. But that's the biggest reason why I was shutting up my mind towards him, was because he just throw around the buzzwords and throw around transphobe all the time. But yeah, the way that you and Saiyomi are approaching a person like me and everyone else in this stream, it's really enlightening. And I would like to thank you guys. I mean, I don't intend to like end the stream at this very second, but still, I do thank you guys for coming on. And you too, Mjollnir.
No problem.
Yeah, well, thank you for like sort of hearing. I mean, I guess, I mean, it must be a bit, I don't know. I didn't know how how the panel would respond to, I guess, the approaches and like what I sort of had to say in the descriptions or whatever. But yeah, obviously it's a very big thank you for people who sort of, taken on board, what my sort of story is and, what my approach is, etc. So even though like some people might be Christian or atheist or whatever, but I'm taking a slightly different spiritual turn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, the skeptics and the skeptic community and the anti-SJWs, they couldn't care less about your personality as far as the gender issue goes. I mean, they couldn't care less if you're like a bullish female or a fruity man. The issue is pronouns, the politicization of it, and physical sex. Again, I mean, I sound like a broken record now, that the fact that I keep on bringing up physically observable sex and whatnot, but really that is the issue, and whether or not the gender spectrum is scientific. That's the main issue of it. The main reason why we are mostly agreeing with you is because you're like talking about personality and gender, feminine or masculine a person is.
Yeah, because I think the only times where we should have the state really intervening is where there's danger. So obviously we have to protect, no matter what type of sexual persona there is, like just to protect every single form of dissidence under the law. So obviously we need to protect them against any sort of violence or, workplace discrimination or whatever, and obviously promote like a certain, an enlightened attitude. But as far as
Owen wouldn't agree with that.
No, I mean that's the legal. I mean there should be the legal protection and the equal rights before the law and employment opportunities. So all those things should be protected. But then it comes a time where like different communities, whatever. And I'm sort of confused as to why like I'd be under the same umbrella, as Saiyomi, like because the experiences are totally different. So I don't sort of like the idea of saying, transphobia if you don't think that the non-binary is a thing, because I don't know. I think those are two very different experiences. I'm not sure why they're being put under the same umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but because for Saiyomi, it's mostly physical. For you, it's mental, spiritual, and personality-wise.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I can see like the other aspects as well, and I can see that every person has a different combination of masculine or feminine.
Yeah, and then there's that it's that critical point where because the reason why people feel genderless is because they have a 50-50 combination of those personality traits, or as I call them, I use the word elements or ingredients, or whatever you want to call them, the two colors or whatever, they've been mixed in a very evenly proportion. That's really what creates the sense of not belonging to a particular gender as a subjective feeling, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this stream has gotten more focused now that we have less people. I mean, just a side note.
Yeah.
We're mostly talking about the philosophy. It kind of would have been more interesting if we got more into the science of this issue. But I am going to bring up a little bit of a scientific issue. Have you guys heard of the proto-penis? The proto-penis.
No.
No.
No, what is that?
No, well, basically, well, actually, Lonely Wolf, you saw my video response to Science Plus. The guy was the one mentioning the proto-penis and talking about how female hyenas will sometimes have sometimes have a proto-penis that can get an erection, and it has like but when I actually gone researching into the issue, basically the proto-penis is just an abnormally large clitoris. I mean, it doesn't have an actual scrotum to accompany it. It does not ejaculate. In fact, it immaculates like a regular vagina would. Just it's a little bit harder to do because you're you're trying to get, or the hyena is trying to get their dick stuck into it, but it's just difficult to stick into something skinny like that. Oh man, Zach, shut the fuck up. You're being cringy as fuck right now.
Are you talking about a hyena proto-penis, like, or enlarged, or lady boner?
But yeah, it's not a third type of genitals. It's just an abnormally large clitoris. I mean, a dick can be extra small, but it'll still be a dick. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. Oh, plus the hyenas can still give birth through their proto-penis.
I don't know. I haven't really personally put much into the stream because I personally don't see it as that big of a deal. Like, whatever a person wants to identify as, just, I really don't have a problem with it. It's just when the politics kind of get brought into it, that's kind of when I start getting all fired up about it. But as far as like just personality-wise and just how people carry themselves in day-to-day life, I really could not care less.
No, and we're not gonna have a progressive attitude and like a tolerance towards these type of things when the activism itself is very, very like, it really is rather obnoxious in a lot of different ways. And like, I've joined those like discussion groups on Facebook because somebody invited me to join a Facebook group for people who are kind of asexual and non-binary, and I was immediately out of phase with it. Like, I didn't argue with anybody or I just sort of had a look at it and I said, okay, I'm out of here, because I just felt like I was way out of phase, and I felt like I was being sort of almost like pigeonholed into another box. And so that's the danger of politicization of that. But it's going to, I mean, eventually, we've got to be able to make these concepts palatable to the everyday public and to you know, and bringing to the public consciousness that, you know, we have different personalities and, you know, transgender, etc. We want that to be progressive, but it's not going to happen because everyone's like, because it's far too aggressive and.
Well, you're definitely making it palatable. I'll just say
yeah, that's really the mission. And same with asexuality as well. Like when I sort of present that, it's just, you know, I try to make that as a concept and try to draw analogies in that and make it into an interesting type of discussion to have people engage and to want to know more about it. And it's not going to be achieved by all this vocabulary and this complicated word that, I mean, I can't even understand what they're talking about. Like half the time, some of the words they use in that. And you know, instead of connecting with the public, it's all about lecturing and scolding and yeah, I can't really support that sort of approach that comes from, like, even though I am kind of left-leaning in a lot of ways, I just can't really, like some of the activism is becoming very agitated and I know it's just fundamentally, I just don't agree with how it's going.
Yeah, I actually have someone that I know, a friend that is, they consider themselves non-binary and they're also transsexual.
Yep.
But
okay.
How they described non-binary is they don't really, you know, hold themselves, like, when I talk to them about it, like, there's femininity and there's masculinity. They're not really on any, they don't really assign themselves on any kind of in between there. It just depends on how they feel on that given day based on, you know, more of the social aspects and mental aspects of gender.
Yeah, and I think a lot, and you know, we're not really considering the yeah, because sometimes it seems to be in a very much it's an insulated community, and I do have to acknowledge the fact that, you know, some of the anti-SJW, not the content creators so much, but the followers, when they swarm into these comments of the like Milo Stewart or etc., like they just follow, like it's an absolute spurg fest on the comment section. You know, kill yourself, like, you know, you're a worthless human being, you're retarded, and just this. I mean, obviously, I think that plays some kind of role, a very negative role in the whole thing, in that. What it's not helping at all with that cause, because it's not helping us to open the dialogue. It's just creating, because these type of people become very insular, like they're going to stick to themselves and cling to each other even further.
And on that note, if I may interject, the anti-SJWs are not doing much better on trying to attract people from the other side when they go making death threats, as you say, towards Milo Stewart. Just like on the flip side, how I was mentioning, Owen McDonald isn't doing his side any good by calling everybody a transphobe, and so.
Yeah, I mean, underneath that, there's still sort of a humanity. So especially because I think, because amongst everyone on this panel, I think there's a variety of different feelings. Because I've spoken to S-Man about this before, but you know, he's obviously because the animosity between, it's not really a deep animosity between them, because I think underneath that they still have a certain. There's a mutual respect that they have for each other, that he's exchanging ideas and he's appearing on live streams to share his thoughts, etc. And so and I'm certainly like I get along quite well with Owen, like because you know, that's how like S-Man met me, like when I did like a live stream with him. And so like there's a few things like politically that, you know, I do agree with on, and you know, we follow each other's channels and we're friends on Facebook and everything like that, but it's yeah, it sort of depends on who you are. Like I think S-Man's got a bit more of a I guess it's kind of a frenemy type dynamic is what I'd describe it as.
I've never met Owen, so
no. I mean, because he's going through, I mean, he goes through a hard time with depression, and that's what S-Man said, and that's what I hope we can do with like maybe S-Man and I, that we could, like, you know, just have him on a stream that has nothing to do with politics or like or gender or whatever, just like a complete topic that would be like.
Owen, you mentioned that Owen has a depression, and Owen is definitely not doing himself any favors with alienating other people as transphobic and whatnot on that issue. I mean, it just makes him more and more want to be assholes towards him. For example, I got on him on Twitter I mean, I was just getting so sick and tired of the constant accusations of bigotry, and so just flat out when I tagged him the video, Owen McDonald has zero credibility. Not only in that video do I like call him all sorts of names, but also when I tweeted him I said, "I'm calling you out, bitch," and then after that, it just kind of turned to shit. Like, I was calling him names, he was calling me names. I mean, I asked him a couple of questions that he couldn't answer, of course. Like, I re-asked Aspie's original question: can a 52-year-old man claim to be a 16-year-old and just because he feels like it? And then the second question was, if it's all right for you to make claims without backing them up, is it okay for Steven Crowder to as well? Neither of them he can answer.
Yeah, because I sort of like, I think in certain dynamics, like I don't really hold that much hope, but I think with as far as S-Man goes, I think that there'll always be like a I don't know, they're always going to be it's not going to be complete animosity between the two of them per se, just these two individuals. It's because, you know, like S-Man's always going to try to reach out to him if he's in like if he's in trouble or whatever, and that's like fundamentally, like if anyone sort of, even the people that I really absolutely despise, you know, if they're in any sort of trouble or whatever, like, you know, of course, like I'd put aside like any sort of differences of opinions, like even if it was like Bronx Blogger or Cult of Dusty or someone like that, I'd still be concerned about them, you know, if something went wrong. And that's what's missing. I mean, what happened to Blair White, it was like an act of like a male feminist, like have attacked, like physically attacked this woman and said, you know, you were asking for it. And who was it? Cult of Dusty? No, it wasn't. Bronx Blogger. Sorry, that's like libel. What did he say? He said like, you know, like I wouldn't care if a building fell over her head. Like I'd probably masturbate to it and ejaculate. I'm just thinking. I mean, that is yeah, that some of that far left position. It's absolutely, it's kind of sickening, the stripping away of any sort of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's far removed from it. There's no humanity in it anymore. It's been completely dissolved from this issue entirely. It's just like, who can I fuck on the most? And that honestly, that just sounds cringy as hell to begin with. That whole, probably mad. Like, whatever.
But I mean, I'd at least like to think that, like, I think this part of the community, because we're kind of, even though we're a smaller subculture of YouTube, I guess the philosophy part of YouTube, I guess we could call ourselves that, more of the philosophers rather than skeptics.
Yeah,
you know,
better fitting description.
We could call that, yeah.
Well,
it's
we
like
already have a name for ourselves. It's called the Cancer Podcast.
Cancer Podcast, yeah. And then if it gets really bad, it's like it can be the Cunt Cancer Podcast if we really want to like get bad. It's like
that's our community.
Yeah, but I'd like to think that, you know, we would have like a compassion for somebody on the other side of like whoever's being like hostile towards especially the centrist positions of whatever people are being hostile. Like, I'd like to think that, you know, we have that empathy that if something goes wrong, you know, in like, or a tragedy or whatever that happens to people who we disagree, that we'd still have that essential humanity and empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess I ought to still reach out to Owen if he does go tweeting about how, oh, I'm depressed. I mean, but even though he can be a bit of a slime when it comes to politics,
I'd honestly say there's a certain point where you're just kind of spouting rhetoric, and I think Owen's far removed from original thought.
I mean, because I'm still on very good terms with him, so it's like because I've been friends with him for like about a year now, so it's not really so I'm kind of in the middle of sort of two things, but it's that'd be good, because that's what S-Man and I were saying. It'd be good to have, like, if there was like a certain type of interaction in which we didn't, it could be something, it could be any topic that's of interest, like music or anything. You know, any sort of topic, just to sort of bring out, you know, maybe a common, just so you can start from common ground again, because there's still hope, like, especially I think with S-Man, I think there's particularly hope with him as well, because they're still, like, I still classify that relationship as a frenemy status. not as butting heads. As much as they argue, I still think that there's like an underlying mutual respect that goes on.
I kind of sensed that in their debate about religion a while back.
Yeah. For them to be on the same side of a debate, that's like a good thing.
Yeah, me and JJ did shit in that. I thought I did better just one-on-one with S-Man, and when I was debating side-by-side with Aspie against S-Man, but of course that was a 2-on-1 situation, so that wasn't really fair. And then there was the one time when I was with Humane Mind, debating S-Man and Son of Lucifer. I thought those 3 debates were better than the one when I was teaming up with JJ against Owen and S-Man. Just my personal opinion. Very quickly, I mean, I want to kind of wrap up the stream here pretty soon, but very quickly, on the political side of the whole gender issue, what do you guys think of C16? Like, is it really something that will fine people for not giving them their pronouns, or is it not something that will fine you for not giving people their pronouns? Because I hear a lot of confusion on that issue.
Yeah, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it materializing, because, as I said before, it's really about a generation of people who have to find their own feet. They have to discover their own identity, and obviously, like, they should be protected from any form of discrimination. That's fine, but anything that goes in addition to that becomes an excess authoritarian, I think it's infringing on their liberties as well as everybody else's. So it's out of concern for them as well, because they're sort of finding their feet. And as a generation, like, each generation we're defying authority figures. That's what we're doing. We're not trying to bring authority figures into our lives like too much. We want to be protected from violence or discrimination, but that's it. I mean, everything else should be kind of libertarian, and that's the only way that a generation is really going to move forward and differentiate themselves from the previous generation, is through defiance of authority, not deference to it.
I mean, I think with certain situations, everybody should have an equal opportunity. And from what I read of it, I don't know. My fears are like its potentiality to be abused. And I just think it's just going to be just a thick forest you're never going to be able to get out of. Like,
no, it's really going to, it's going to move. It's regressive.
How do you address someone? Like, what would you like to eat? Like, there's no, like, you can't really, it's almost as if you can't even like talk to an individual as if they were an individual nowadays. Because I'm looking at like New York, where they're like, oh, and now it's a punishable crime to misgender someone. And it's like, I know it sounds harsh, but we typically rely on our sight, and obviously biological and females and males appear differently. So naturally people would just address them by, what would you like, miss? What would you like, sir? So it's almost like taking
When I was bringing up C16, I wasn't bringing that up in regards to if people thought that it's a good idea to restrict people's speech and make sure that they give transgenders their pronouns and whatnot. Because I'm pretty sure that everybody who is included in the Cancer Podcast is of the same opinion. Do not restrict people's free speech in that area. But why I brought up C16 is that there are actually debates as to whether it actually does restrict people's free speech. Some people, like Jordan Peterson and the rest of the skeptic community, will say that it restricts people's free speech by making sure that they get fined if they was to address somebody who wants to be addressed as Z as she instead, and they get fined. But then there are progressives and other people who will say, no, it does not restrict people's freedom of speech. I did not know what you guys thought on that. It's confusing to me.
Yeah, it's not really restricting free speech. It's almost compelling people, you have to use this speech. But the whole thing, it's a very retrograde thing, because it's dividing more than it is you. Because the whole, call me old-fashioned, but I thought the idea of progressive politics was to unite people and bring them together. And now it's, I guess it's a fear, that people are having, and the feeling of distrust and, uncertainty. That's just going to create even a greater division between, everyone else. Like I want everyone to be united and on equal terms with each other, but that's not going to be achieved with such a political climate that's become so retrograde.
Yeah. And one thing that is definitely not progressive and definitely regressive about Owen, for example, is basing facts of science and biology off of feelings. And okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up right here because I haven't even had dinner yet today. So, say you guys as a final statement.
I should eat some lunch.
Oh yeah, it's just turning afternoon for there in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually noon now.
Oh shit, it's almost 9 here.
It's almost 9 for me as well. I mean, I'm in the Midwest as well. So yeah, let's wrap it up pretty soon. I think my computer is about to crap out here in a second.
I don't know. Closing statement wise, I mean, all I really have to say is just be who you want, but don't expect people to respect who you feel you are. So I guess kind of graze through it cautiously. And, you know, not everything has to be such a big battle. Over time, the climate is going to change anyway, as it always does.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say over time.
I concur.
Yeah. I guess the closing statement that I'd probably make is, I guess it's out of concern because I'm not doing this to pwn anybody or to be harsh. It's it's kind of like tough love, I guess, is that, you know, that our identity is, you know, unless we're talking about transgenderism in which there's dysphoria, which can be very distressing and there's a need for hormones or whatever. But if you're kind of like me in that kind of center area, that kind of gray area where it's a bit ambiguous, then, you know, I think the biggest mission that you have, you know, if you're someone who's watching that, you know, the biggest mission you have is to create a sense of self, but it has to exceed, you know, beyond just this these definitions or kind of latching onto words per se. I mean, the identity is much bigger than that. So you have to think about, you know, what makes you different from everybody else, because with just a gender label by itself, you know, to the rest of the world, that's very mundane as a thing, which is a harsh thing to say, but unfortunately it's true. It is. The rest of the world doesn't really care about what the identity or gender spectrum you are. It's just but people will be interested in what you do with your life, what you study, what you read. Yeah.
Yep, and I think I'm gonna stop the broadcast right there. And for the 2 viewers who have been sticking with us this long, thank you very much. And everybody who has viewed in general, I thank you. And thank all of you for joining me on this stream to talk about gender.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me.
I consider this issue case closed for right now, at least. So.